His Amish Romance. Copyright 2017 by Samantha Price. All rights reserved. Chapter 1. Levi Fuller woke up and looked around the room. For a moment, he had no idea where he was. It took a few seconds to remember he was at his older brother's house. Isaac was getting married today, and the wedding was to be held at Levi and Isaac's parents' home. Isaac was nervous about the wedding, and had asked Levi if he would spend the night with him. They'd stayed up talking into the early hours of the morning. It was a little shocking to Levi that Isaac was marrying a woman, after knowing her for only a short length of time. Before Hazel had come along, everyone thought Isaac would marry Mary Lou since they had been courting for 2 years. Last night, Isaac had confessed to Levi that he'd never felt right about Mary Lou. He'd had nagging doubts that she wasn't the one for him. He'd thought he loved her, but there was a certain feeling that had been missing. A sudden knock on the bedroom door jolted Levi. Without thinking, he blurted out, "Who is it?" "Me. Who else would it be?" "You'd better hurry up or we'll be late, and I can't be late for my own wedding," Isaac said. "You should have woken me sooner," Levi yelled back. A shaft of light beamed through an opening in the bedroom curtains. Lucy opened her eyes, and then turned over and looked at Hazel, who was still sleeping. Weeks ago, Mrs. Fuller had suggested to Hazel in front of Lucy to have Lucy as her wedding attendant bridesmaid. Lucy had accepted the invitation since Hazel, an only child and a newcomer here, barely knew any girls in the community. Both Lucy and Hazel had stayed overnight in the same bedroom in the Fuller household. Isaac's parents had generously offered to host the wedding when they learned that Hazel and her mother were unable to do so. It was sad, Lucy thought, that Hazel didn't have a sister or any good friends who could be with her at such an important time in her life. Hazel had been staying at the bishop's house while she was living in Lancaster County. When the wedding day approached, Hazel's mother, aunt and uncle had traveled from Allentown, and the 3 of them were staying at the bishop's house until after the wedding. Hazel had still been living there during the wedding preparations, but it had made sense for Hazel to stay at the Fullers for the night before she was to be married. Lucy had been determined not to like Hazel. In her opinion, her good friend Mary Lou should have been the one marrying Isaac, not a near stranger that hardly anyone knew. She'd kept her opinion to herself, and had done her best to keep Hazel company the night before her wedding. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw movement. It was Hazel, stirring as she began to awaken. When she looked over, Hazel was opening her eyes, and Lucy smiled at her. "Good morning, Hazel. It's your wedding day." Hazel's green eyes sparkled. "I never thought this day would come." "Well, it's here." She giggled. "Danka for staying here with me last night. I still don't know that many people in the community." "It was nice to get to know you a little better," Lucy replied. "I know what you mean. It's been nice getting to know you as well. And one day, you and Levi might be the ones getting married. Maybe. And then we'll be sisters-in-law." Although Lucy was smiling for Hazel's sake, she was a little sad for Mary Lou, believing her friend had been badly treated by Isaac. "I guess there'll be a lot of people here for the wedding." "I think so. The Fullers know so many people." Lucy asked, "What about your family and your community?" "There'll just be my Uncle Luke and Aunt Bee and my mother. The bishop at my old community couldn't make it." Hazel sat up. "My family isn't very popular in our community." Lucy propped herself up on her elbow. "Why not?" Levi had already told her some things about Hazel's family, but Lucy didn't want to let on that she knew. She'd feel much warmer toward Hazel if she told her something so personal. "It's a long story, but my father was in and out of the community and he was shunned twice over the period of a few years. He eventually left altogether. He's living with an Englishwoman now, and he'll never come back. After everything he put everyone through, no one would want him back." "And that's why you and your mother weren't popular?" "Yeah. People kept their distance from us." Lucy saw the deep sadness in Hazel's eyes. "I know how that feels," Lucy said. Hazel's eyebrows rose. "Really?" "Yeah. I have an uncle, my mother's brother, and he disgraced the whole family." She lowered her voice. "And now I think some people don't think my sisters and I are good people just because we're related to him. We're looked down upon. It shouldn't matter, should it?" "Nay, I don't think so. How can we be responsible for others?" Just because we're related doesn't mean we're the same, or we'd make the same decisions. Lucy breathed out heavily. I guess they don't think we're responsible for what that person did, but you're right, they still think we're the same as them. Lucy could now see how Hazel was very similar to her, but that was not enough for Lucy to forgive her for what happened to Mary Lou. Let's just talk about happy things today. Yeah, you're right. Hazel yawned and stretched her arms over her head. I suppose I should get up, Hazel said, yawning once more. What time is it? Hazel turned around and looked at her clock on the nightstand. It's 6:30. Yeah, we should start getting ready. There's a lot to do. Well, not for you. I'll bring breakfast up to you if you want to stay in bed a little longer. Nay, Denka. I don't think I could eat a thing. There'll be plenty to eat after the wedding, I guess. You should try to eat something, though. If you don't eat at all, you might feel sick to your stomach with all the excitement. I'm already sick to my stomach from nervousness. That's no good. Let's go downstairs before all the boys wake up. Hazel giggled. Good idea. There were 7 boys in the Fuller family, and with Isaac having his own home and Levi having stayed at his house last night, that left 5 of the Fuller boys in the house, plus their parents, Ivy and Obadiah Fuller. Instead of changing into the clothes they were wearing for the wedding, the girls changed into plain day dresses and prayer caps before they headed off. They walked slowly and carefully down the wooden staircase and past the 2 living rooms before they reached the paved stone floor of the kitchen. You sit down, Lucy ordered Hazel. When Hazel was seated, Lucy started heating the water for coffee. I'll make pancakes while the water's heating. Can't I help? Whispered Hazel. Nay. You sit and talk to me while I cook. You can get some plates out of the cupboard if you want. The wedding was to be held at midday, and soon people would arrive to set up the house for the wedding service. All the furniture would be removed from the Fullers' large living area, to be replaced with the wooden benches that were used for the Sunday services. The ladies would begin preparing the food for the meal that was to follow the service. Hazel took the plates out of the cupboard, but as she swung around to place them on the table, they slipped from her hands. They hit the floor and broke, and then fragments clinked and clattered along the floor. It made a dreadful racket. Lucy jumped and turned around just in time to see white pieces of plates scattering across the entire length of the stone floor. Hazel swooped down and started scooping up the broken pieces. Lucy watched and wasn't happy about the noise. Now Levi's mother would come downstairs to find out why they were up so early. She wouldn't appreciate them having breakfast first before the rest of the family, Lucy knew that, but the dinner last night with Ivy Fuller looking down her nose at her had been enough, and she didn't want it repeated at breakfast. Give me a moment and I'll help. Lucy poured the pancake batter into the heated fry pan, and then crouched down with Hazel to help her collect the scattered fragments. What's going on here? Both girls looked up to see Mrs. Fuller standing in the doorway of the kitchen with her hands on her hips. I'm dreadfully sorry, Mrs. Fuller. It was all my fault. I think I'm just nervous, Hazel said. Lucy could see that Mrs. Fuller had just woken up. She was wearing a housecoat and had a long thick gray braid hanging over one shoulder rather than pinned on her head, and her prayer cap was askew. That's quite all right. Accidents can't be helped. I have plenty of plates. Mrs. Fuller looked over at the stove, and her mood appeared to darken. You girls couldn't wait to have a family breakfast? I thought we would all eat together on such an important morning. Lucy had been right, Mrs. Fuller didn't appreciate them eating first. I thought we would be too busy. If Hazel and I have breakfast now, then that'll keep us out of the way when the men come with the benches and the women come to prepare the food. Suit yourselves. I was going to make a nice family breakfast. I'm guessing this was your idea, Lucy? Yeah, it was. I'm sorry, Mrs. Fuller. I should have thought about it more. The girls were still crouched down, and Lucy put her head down and arranged the larger pieces into a pile. I agreed to it, Hazel said. It's not your fault, Hazel. You don't know how the household works yet. Lucy knows better. Lucy looked up. I didn't think it would hurt. I've never been here for breakfast before. And you've never had a wedding at your house, Mrs. Fuller, so there's no routine set down for one. She badly wanted to point out to Mrs. Fuller that Hazel's wedding could be the first and only wedding she'd have at her house since she had no daughters. The reason she was hosting this one was that Hazel's mother wasn't well, the family came from Allentown, and Hazel and her mother didn't even have a house. Hazel's mother had been living at Hazel's aunt and uncle's place while she recovered from some kind of nervous breakdown after Hazel's father walked out on them. When Lucy married Levi, she would have the wedding at her parents' house. You should think things through before acting, Lucy. It's not good for a young lady to be as impulsive as you are. Now she had upset the woman who would likely be her mother-in-law someday. I'm sorry, Mrs. Fuller. I should have checked with you last night. I just had it in my head that Hazel and I would have a quick breakfast in the morning, then we could get ready and be out of your way. The wedding isn't until noon. The sun has only just risen. Mrs. Fuller got a bucket out of a cupboard and placed it down near the girls. Put the broken pieces in this, and then there's the wastebasket under the sink for the smaller pieces. I'll have a shower before all the boys wake. I'm sorry we woke you, Mrs. Fuller, Hazel said. Yeah, we're sorry, Lucy added. Too late for sorries. It's always best to think ahead. Then things like this will be avoided. I'm awake early now, and you've no doubt woken the boys. She gave a sharp nod and then walked out of the room. Lucy looked at Hazel to see whether she might have thought the same about Mrs. Fuller, that she was difficult to get along with. Hazel was busily focused on cleaning up the last remnants of the broken plates. Lucy continued with fixing the breakfast. Knowing she was going against Mrs. Fuller's wishes, however, when they eventually ate their pancakes, they didn't taste good to her. Chapter 2. At the wedding, Lucy sat in the Fullers' living room with her eyes fixed on the bishop as he talked about the importance of marriage. He likened the union of woman and man in marriage to the church's relationship to Jesus Christ. Each must make sacrifices as they become one with each other and with God. Lucy had heard the talk many times before and knew the associated scriptures by heart. Next time she heard that same talk, would she be standing in front of Bishop John and getting married to Levi? They had been dating for nearly a year, and Lucy was in no rush to be married, but she certainly didn't want to end up like Mary Lou, cast aside for another woman after 2 years of dating. She looked across at Levi, who caught her eye and smiled. After giving him a quick smile, she turned her eyes back to the front. As far as Lucy could see, the only thing wrong with Levi was his mother. Mrs. Fuller didn't like her, but that was outside of her control. It seemed Levi's mother was keeping her opinion of Lucy to herself, because Levi had never given her any indication that his mother had said anything to him about her. Even though the Fullers' living room had been packed full of benches to accommodate the wedding guests, there were still people standing around the sides of the room, and outside on the porch were yet more people who couldn't fit in the house. As far as she could, Lucy kept her mind off Mary Lou, but it was hard to see Isaac marrying someone else. For a long time, it had been Isaac and Mary Lou. It was weird that he had shifted his attention to Hazel so quickly. Every time she thought about Mary Lou, she pushed the image of her friend's sad face out of her mind. When Lucy saw Hazel and Isaac walk away from the bishop, she realized that they'd been pronounced married. She was such a daydreamer. She had missed the whole thing, or at least the important part. It was time for everyone to leave the house and enjoy the wedding feast set up in the Fuller's yard. There was nothing like the food at an Amish wedding. There were all kinds of roasted meats, roasted vegetables, salads, plenty of mashed potatoes and sweet potatoes, bologna and sausages, and one of her favorites, creamed celery. The desserts were mostly cakes. There wasn't a main wedding cake, there were many of different flavors. The tables for the wedding meal had been set up in the yard, and the bride and groom's table was positioned at one end. "Shall we?" a deep male voice said. She looked up to see Joshua, and then realized that everybody behind her was moving out of the house. She sprang to her feet. Yeah, of course. Joshua was the wedding attendant for Isaac. Isaac had said he didn't want to have Levi, the closest brother to him in age, perform that duty, as he figured there'd be pressure on him as the second eldest to marry, especially because he'd have been paired with Lucy. Levi had told Lucy that Isaac had always disliked people telling him that he should be married just because he was a certain age. Levi walked out of the house behind Lucy and Joshua. "Lucy, when you can slip away, come and talk to me. I'll be sitting up in the back somewhere." She turned around and said, "I will." Turning back around, Lucy continued walking with Joshua. He went to the other side of the table to sit next to Isaac while she took her seat next to Hazel. "That was a beautiful ceremony, Hazel," Lucy said. "It was special. It was a little longer than I had expected." Hazel giggled. Bishop John likes to get his point across, Lucy replied. Hazel nodded politely. The guests at the wedding served themselves buffet style, while the people at the bride and groom's table had their meals brought to them. When most of the people had taken their seats, the ladies placed food in front of the 4 people at the wedding table. Your mother looks very happy, Hazel, Lucy said, noticing a rare smile on her mother Judy's tired and withered face. Hazel looked over at her mother. She, along with Hazel's aunt and uncle, was sitting with the bishop and his wife. She is. She's so pleased I found a good man like Isaac. She keeps telling me that good men are hard to find, Hazel said. Lucy didn't believe that. She saw good men everywhere. How long is your mother staying here? Only a couple more days. You can have a lovely time with her then. That's why Isaac and I aren't leaving to go traveling tomorrow. I wanted the 2 of us to spend some time with her first. I guess she'll miss you terribly. Lucy knew it would be hard for Hazel's mother because Hazel was her only child. She will. She's already missed me since I've been here for work. Hazel took a mouthful of food while Lucy stuck her fork into the mashed potatoes. Then Isaac said something to Hazel, and they giggled with each other like a couple of lovebirds. Lucy looked around to see where Levi had chosen to sit. She spotted him sitting with his brothers at the far end of the yard. As soon as it was polite to do so, she'd leave Hazel and sit with Levi for a few minutes. Chapter 3. Levi sat waiting for Lucy to come and sit by him. Isaac's the first of us to get married. Who will be next? His youngest brother Benjamin asked. Who will be next to fall off the perch? Timothy laughed. It took him long enough, Jacob said. That's because he didn't have the right girl, Benjamin the youngest said. I knew Hazel was a good girl. If he didn't marry her, I would have. The brothers laughed at him. You wouldn't have had a chance, Samuel told him. Jacob laughed the loudest and then said, Nay, you wouldn't have had a chance, Benjamin. You're barely out of diapers. She wants to have a baby, not marry one. Benjamin was the only one who didn't find that funny. I'm old enough. Anyway, let's make our predictions of who will be next. Ah, but whoever he is, will he take as long as Isaac did? Samuel asked. And then change his mind at the last minute? Jacob added. It's logical that it'll have to be Levi because he's the only one of us with a girlfriend, Timothy pointed out. The only one with a girlfriend that he's had for longer than a week. Benjamin chuckled. Not like the 2 of you. He nodded his head at Timothy and Jacob. They're not your girlfriend if you only take them for one buggy ride, Jacob said. Benjamin shook his head. Perhaps you should be more choosy who you take for a buggy ride. Jacob scowled at him. What do you mean? I don't think you should take every girl in the community for a buggy ride. Why not? Because soon you'll have taken them all out and then you'll have no one left. Levi leaned forward. I don't think this is the time or the place that you should be discussing these things. We're only joking around. Don't take things too seriously, Jacob told him. Just because Isaac will be gone for a few weeks, he figures he has to step into the role as the oldest brother, Timothy said. Yeah, don't try to act like Isaac. Jacob chuckled. Levi shook his head. His brothers were impossible sometimes. I'm just trying to give you some advice. If someone overhears you, they'll get the wrong idea. And will that be our fault or theirs? Benjamin asked. You know what the word says about offending people, Levi said. Levi's right, said Samuel. We should save this kind of talk for later. All right, but just don't take everything so seriously, Levi, like Jacob just said. That's all I'm saying, Benjamin said. I'll keep that in mind. Advice from the youngest son must be so valuable. Out of the mouths of babes, Benjamin said with a grin. Levi ignored his brothers and looked over at Lucy sitting at the wedding table. Sometimes he liked to stare at her and appreciate how pretty she was. The way her eyes sparkled melted his heart. When he caught her eye, she pushed out her chair and then whispered something to Hazel. Hazel nodded, and when Lucy stood up, he knew she was heading his way. He moved away from his brothers to the other end of the table to make room for Lucy. When he looked back, he saw that his mother had intercepted her, and now they were talking to each other. As he stared at his mother's face, he tried to gauge from her expression what she was saying, but he couldn't. His mother was very forceful, and had a way of trying to make everyone do exactly what she wanted. Levi knew that Lucy hadn't wanted to be Hazel's bridesmaid, not when she was Mary Lou's best friend. Lucy would have known Mary Lou wouldn't want her to have anything to do with Isaac's wedding. Everyone knew Mary Lou would have been upset by Isaac's sudden marriage to Hazel, and none of Mary Lou's family was at the wedding. To make matters worse, Mary Lou had left the community. Even though she had left the community after her dalliance with an Englisher while she was dating his brother, Levi was still a little shocked that his brother's marriage to Hazel had been so quick. Isaac didn't normally do things quickly. He was a plotter, a thinker, so why had he rushed in so fast to marry Hazel? Finally, Lucy and Levi's mother finished their conversation, and Lucy made her way over to him. "Hello," he said. "Hi." When she sat down next to him, he asked, "What did my mother want?" "Nothing. She just said hello and asked how things were." "What kind of things?" He knew there was a lot more to it than that. He guessed his mother was still bothered about the accident with the plates, and the two girls not having breakfast with the rest of the family. She shrugged her shoulders. "This and that." "Such as?" he asked, wondering why she was being so secretive. "Nothing about you and me, if that's what you were wondering." Lucy managed a smile. "Nay, it was just about Hazel. I think she's concerned that Hazel doesn't know many people, and she wants things to be more comfortable for her. I said I'd do my best to befriend her. I'm already doing that, so I'm not sure why she asked me again. She also didn't want me to think she was cranky with me." "When you broke all our plates?" She playfully slapped his arm. "I didn't break all your plates. Anyway, who said I broke any?" He chuckled. "I heard all about it." Lucy sighed and then looked down at the table. Normally Lucy smiled and was happy all the time. Today she looked glum. "Why aren't you happy today, Lucy?" Lucy looked over at Levi. "I am happy." "Nay, you're not. You can't fool me. What's got you so upset?" There was that incident with his mother that morning, and his older brother was marrying Hazel rather than her good friend Mary Lou. How could he expect her to look as though she was enjoying herself? "I'm not upset, not really." He lowered his head and fastened his eyes upon her as he waited for her to speak. He knew her too well. She had to be honest with him. "I'm getting to know Hazel and I'm liking her more the more time I spend with her, but I can't help feeling that Mary Lou didn't get a fair chance." "To do with what?" Levi drew his dark eyebrows together. Hazel arrived and then Mary Lou was moved into second place. Mary Lou and Isaac had been together for 2 whole years, and that's a long time. They were together for quite a while, that's true, but what you just said is not the way I heard things worked out. I'm fairly certain Mary Lou left the community first, and then Hazel and Isaac got together after that. She only left because she knew what was going to happen between Hazel and Isaac. She saw the writing on the wall. "Either way, it's not Hazel's fault," Levi said. "Do you mean it's your brooder's fault?" "Nay, it's no one's. Hazel and Isaac are meant to be together. He told me last night that they met a long time ago, years ago, and he never forgot her. As a young teenager, he asked her to marry him, and then they drifted apart and lost touch. From what he said, they met for just 1 day and fell in love." Lucy stared into his eyes. If he was so in love with Hazel and it was love at first sight, why was he dating Mary Lou? He thought he'd never find Hazel again. He was so young when they met. He said he didn't think he'd ever feel like that with anyone again. "And how do you know all this?" Lucy asked. "I just told you that. He told me last night. We were up pretty late." Lucy fixed her lips tightly together. "It sounds silly. He doesn't sound like a real man. I'm sorry, I know he's your brother and everything, but it's weird to ask someone he didn't know really well to marry him after stringing Mary Lou along for 2 years. For 2 whole years. He kept her off the market, and now she's so much older. Everyone knew it was always harder to find a spouse the older one got, and it was especially true for women." Levi shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know. It's not for you or me to tell him how to think and feel." She looked down at his plate of food. It was some of her favorites, bologna and creamed celery, but she'd lost her appetite out of sadness for her best friend. "Are you still in touch with Mary Lou?" he asked. She looked into his bright blue eyes. "I saw her in town once. She gave me the number of her cell phone." Is she coming back to the community? She's left so she might never come back. I have a feeling she'll be back though, and when I have a strong feeling about something, I'm always right. He chuckled, as though she was exaggerating. She's still upset over what happened with Isaac. Why? She's the one who ended their relationship, and she's the one who broke up with Isaac. Lucy didn't like what he was saying. Is that true? He nodded. As far as I know. That's what I heard. She repeated how she felt at the risk of upsetting him. I think your brother treated her unfairly and that's why she left. Why would she come back? He let her go on for 2 years, believing he was going to marry her. She could have married half a dozen other men, but she waited for him because he'd made promises and now look at what happened. He married a completely different woman. She looked over at Isaac and Hazel, who were staring into each other's eyes and whispering. It should have been Mary Lou. I've never heard you talk like this. Levi spoke in a quiet voice. She blinked hard. I'm just saying what's on my mind, that's all. It sounds to me like you're trying to say that my brother did something bad or wrong, and he didn't. She rolled her eyes. That's a matter of opinion. If the bishop had thought Isaac had done something wrong, he wouldn't have married Hazel and Isaac. Perhaps the bishop doesn't know the true story. Levi shook his head. I want to be happy today. Happy for Isaac and my new sister-in-law. He deserves happiness. He's waited so long to find the right woman and now he has. I want to be happy for him. And I can't be happy for him while you're in this sullen mood with your crazy ideas. You should try to understand how I feel. You should at least attempt to see things from my point of view. Mary Lou was my best friend and she did nothing wrong. He shrugged. That's not what I heard. What did you hear? Forget it. Her voice rose just slightly. What did you hear? He looked from side to side and then said, I said forget it. You can't say something like that and then just say forget it. Keep your voice down, people are starting to look, he hissed. She stood up and smoothed down her special blue dress. I'm going back to sit at the wedding table, if I'm bringing down your good mood and your happiness level. Good, I was just about to suggest that myself. She walked away and sat back down next to Hazel. Looking down at the food on the table in front of her, she stuck in her fork and ate a bit of roasted chicken that had grown cold. Then she forced herself to chew even though her stomach was churning. She wanted to be anywhere other than here, at this wedding. She turned back to Levi to see him with his head down eating. He'd moved back to the other end of the table, closer to his brothers. Maybe she could have waited until after the wedding to express her views, but still he'd asked what was wrong with her. Now she was questioning their whole relationship. If there was one thing that was important to her in a husband, it was that he be supportive of her. Levi wasn't being that way, he wasn't even trying to understand how she felt. Even if he didn't agree with her, he still should have been supportive. And besides that, he told her Mary Lou had left the community and then they'd broken up. Someone wasn't telling the truth about the situation. And what did he know about Mary Lou that he'd refused to tell her? Hazel turned to her. Everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. I'm sorry I moved away from the table here. I hope you didn't mind, but I just wanted to talk to Levi for a while. I don't mind at all, but I'm glad you're back. Hazel was so nice that Lucy felt a little bad for abandoning her just now, and for not being totally happy for her. I guess I haven't been the best wedding attendant. Oh, you have? I don't know how I would have coped without you keeping me calm last night and entertaining me this morning. I think we gave Isaac's mother an awful fright. Lucy giggled and put her finger up to her mouth, giving her the sign to be quiet. She didn't want Isaac to hear what Hazel had just said about his mother. She doesn't like me, I can tell you that, and I haven't done anything to her, Lucy whispered. Maybe she's just like that with everyone. Not with you, Lucy said. I can tell she likes you. I hope she does. She just doesn't like my whole family, not really, Lucy whispered, and then she remembered they'd already had a similar conversation that morning, not long after they'd woken up. Do you want to try some different food? Hazel asked, looking down at the nearly full plate in front of Lucy. I've eaten quite a bit. There was too much on my plate. I also ate before when I was talking to Levi. I'm not very hungry. Hazel put a hand over her stomach. Me either. I'm still a bit nervous. Just at that moment, Isaac said something to Hazel, and Hazel had no choice but to turn away from Lucy. Lucy glanced over at Levi to see him still at the same table, but now he was talking to their mutual friend Nella. Lucy had always thought she'd marry Levi, but with his current attitude she wasn't so sure. She closed her eyes for a moment and imagined Mary Lou was marrying Isaac rather than Hazel. The wedding would have had a whole different feel, and she'd be much happier if Isaac had married Mary Lou like he should have. When she looked back over at Levi again, she was most annoyed to see Levi still speaking to Nella, and they were laughing. What would they have to laugh about? If she wasn't having a disagreement with him right now, she would go back and find out. Hazel turned back to face Lucy. Who's that girl talking to Levi? That's just a friend. Her name's Nella. That's right, I remember now. I've met her before. I can't remember everyone. I'm not used to a big community like this. It won't take too long to get to know everyone. I hope not. Isaac and I will be back in 2 weeks, and then would you and Levi come over for dinner? Lucy looked over at Levi again, and hoped things would be better between them in 2 weeks. They'd never had an argument before or even a crossword. She wasn't sure whether their argument was a final one that would end their relationship, or one that would be over in 5 minutes. Danka, we'd love that. I'll look forward to it. Wonderful. I can't wait to have you over for an evening meal. We're not leaving for a couple of days because I wanted Isaac and I to spend time with my mother and aunt and uncle tonight, before we go. That sounds nice. She looked over at Hazel's mother, who was sitting with the bishop's wife. Her mother looked older than she'd imagined Hazel's mother would look, and she appeared quite frail. Lucy had heard about Hazel's mother's suicide attempt after her husband, Lucy's father, had left them for the last time, so she felt very sorry for the woman. Chapter 4. As soon as Lucy had walked away from Levi after their disagreement, he stood up to call her back. He could see she was upset, but Nella walking up to him prevented him from going after her. He went to step around Nella, but she spoke to him. Hi, Levi. He put his troubles aside for the moment. Hi, Nella. What can I do for you? The dark lashes that framed her large brown eyes fluttered. What makes you think I want you to do something for me? He chuckled. That's not what I meant. Sometimes I forget I'm not at work. Let me start again. Hi, Nella. How are you? That's better. I'm very well, Danka. Glad to hear it. She giggled and pushed some chestnut-colored strands of hair back under her prayer cap. Actually, there is something you can do for me. Well, I hope you won't mind doing it for me. See, I knew it. I was right. What is it? Well, it's an awkward thing. He stared at her attractive face and knew she was worried about something. You've started now, so you might as well finish. It's about Joshua. He shook his head at the mention of his younger brother closest to him in age. What's he done now? She giggled nervously and then swallowed hard. Nothing. That's the problem. He won't pay me any mind. Was Nella saying she liked Joshua? From the way she was acting, he knew that was exactly what she meant. Oh. He stared at Nella, surprised that she liked his silent-type brother. He was quiet, and nothing at all like the type of man he thought Nella would like. He guessed she would have many men interested in her, so what was the attraction to Joshua? He must be a fool not to pay you any mind. She giggled again. He doesn't talk to me. Why not? I don't know, that's just the way it is. It's been that way for ages. Well, what do you think's the problem? The problem is that he doesn't know I'm alive. Levi scratched his head. You want me to talk to him, is that the favor? Maybe. I'm not sure. If you talk to him, what would you say? I could ask if he's interested in anyone? Her shoulders drooped. I just don't know. What would you like me to do? I thought you might be able to do or say something. I'm not sure. You know him better than anybody, so what would you suggest? Let me have a talk with him, and I'll see what I can do. A smile brightened her face. Would you? Yeah, but I don't know how it will go. Danka, I appreciate that. When Lucy looked up from her seat beside Hazel, her mother was beckoning to her. Excuse me a moment, Hazel. My mother is waving at me for me to go over to her. Sure. Not happy about leaving Hazel alone again, Lucy hurried over to her mother, who was at one of the tables in the middle of the yard. Once she sat down in the spare seat next to her, Lucy took a deep breath. She knew her mother wasn't happy about something. What is it, ma'am? Her mother leaned over and whispered, "Why is Levi talking and laughing with Nella?" Lucy glanced over at Nella and Levi. There's no reason. It's just that I have to sit next to Hazel and he's just talking with her. Don't panic. I'm not panicking about anything. I just think he's giving her too much attention, and she's obviously enjoying it. Look at the way she's gazing into his eyes and laughing. They don't like each other, if that's what you mean. He's my boyfriend and Nella knows that. You don't know what Levi's mother's saying to him when you're not there. She doesn't like us and never has. She'd be only too happy to have Levi marry Nella. She'd think that Nella's family is better than ours, and she might want her son to upgrade. Lucy knew that Mrs. Fuller didn't like her very much, but there was nothing she could do about that. That's not going to happen. Levi isn't going to marry Nella. They're just talking. Don't worry. I think you should go over there. Find out what they've been talking about. I can't. I was just speaking to him. I can't neglect Hazel on her wedding day when I'm her only attendant. Very well, I'll go over and say something since you won't. Ma'am, don't you do any such thing. Her mother didn't appear to hear what she said. I don't know what's wrong with the Fuller boys. Isaac was set to marry Mary Lou and then switched to that girl and married her. Lucy looked around in horror, hoping her mother hadn't been overheard. Quiet, ma'am. No one can hear me, she said in a voice just as loud. Anyway, that's not quite right. He was never engaged to Mary Lou, but I quite agree it does seem strange. But isn't life and love like that sometimes? Lucy's mother said. It's not. Love is not selfish, and I think Isaac is being selfish. He should have considered Mary Lou's feelings before he dumped her and took up with Hazel. Lucy glanced back at the wedding table. I have to go back and sit with Hazel. This is a conversation for another day. Well, if you won't do something about Levi talking to that girl, I will. Nay, ma'am, don't. It was too late. Her mother was striding towards Levi and Nella. Having no idea what her mother would say or do, Lucy had no option but to go back and sit beside Hazel. If she went with her mother, that could make things worse. Are you all right, Lucy? You look dreadful. It's my mother. She's got it in her mind that she doesn't like Nella and Levi talking to one another. She's just gone over to them to see what they're talking about. I'm so embarrassed. Don't worry, my mother would probably have done the same thing in the same situation if she hadn't been so sick. Lucy glanced over at Hazel's frail mother, and doubted that she would ever have had the energy to object to anything at all. Then she looked at her own mother. Acne. She's talking to them right now. I don't want to look. Lucy turned away. Don't worry, I'll look for you. Isaac was sitting on the other side of Hazel talking to Joshua, who was sitting next to him. Hazel continued, Your mother must have just said something funny and now they're both laughing. Really? She's not a funny kind of a person. Who's laughing, Nella or Levi? Both of them. I wonder what she said. Lucy glanced over at them to see that it was true. Both Levi and Nella had their eyes fixed on her mother, and they were both smiling. They looked as though they'd just stopped laughing. They're not looking at me, so they can't be talking about me, I hope. Nay, they haven't looked this way. At that moment, Isaac turned around and started talking to Hazel again. Immediately, Lucy thought back to Mary Lou and how unfairly she'd been treated. Lucy wondered if Isaac had any idea how she felt about the situation. She was sure she was not the only one who felt like that. All of Mary Lou's family must have been upset, because none of them had attended the wedding. The whole day was turning out to be a disaster. Lucy was trying to be happy for Hazel. She certainly didn't want to let Hazel know that she'd just had a few cross words with Levi. All Lucy wanted to do was go home and go to bed. Levi wondered whether Lucy had sent her mother over because he was talking to another woman. Her mother was certainly acting odd, and kept staring at Nella. That meant he had both Lucy and her mother cross with him, and Nella wanted him to do her a favor. Then he had his own mother, who had pulled him aside that very morning and told him he shouldn't take so long to get married like Isaac had. That was 4 women he was trying to please. The stress weighed him down. Thankfully, Lucy's mother had walked away after a brief chat, and then Nella was happy after he had given his word he'd try to help her. Nella's situation was an awkward one. What if Joshua didn't like her at all? Right now, Levi was more concerned with his own situation. He didn't like arguing with Lucy. They'd never had disagreements before, but he didn't agree with her about his brother being unfair to Mary Lou. Mary Lou had made her decision, and had left the community. It seemed to him that Lucy was more concerned over Mary Lou when she should have been concerned about Isaac. Since Lucy and he had been dating for several months, that made Lucy and Isaac almost like family in Levi's opinion. She should have been more concerned about his feelings, rather than a woman who had left the community. Lucy was making a big thing out of nothing, in his opinion. He hoped that time would calm things down. He looked over at Lucy, who was still sitting next to Hazel at the wedding table. He was pleased that she was being nice to Hazel, and was trying to put her loyalty to her friend aside for the sake of Hazel and Isaac having a nice wedding. Then he caught Lucy's eye and they both instantly looked away. He didn't want her to know that he had been looking at her. He then watched Nella sit down with a plate of food near Joshua. Just as she did so, Joshua got up from the table. That struck Levi as odd. It seemed that Joshua was avoiding Nella, which meant one of 2 things. Either he liked her and didn't know what to say to her, or he knew she had a crush on him and he didn't feel the same. Now Levi was intrigued by the situation. He'd talk to Joshua soon and find out what was going on. Levi waited for everyone to go home from the wedding. Isaac and Hazel had left, and so too had Lucy and her family. There were people still there talking, and when his brothers started helping the men clean up, he stood and joined in. There was so much work ahead of them, getting the house and the yard back in order. When the last of the guests had gone, only the workers were left. They were the men who loaded the benches into the church wagon, and the women who washed the dishes and the saucepans. Levi saw Joshua working at the other side of the yard, helping with the benches, and decided that's where he should start working. It was a good wedding today, Joshua, wasn't it? Joshua smiled at him as he lifted a bench along with David, one of the men who'd volunteered to help. It was. The 2 men carried the bench to the wagon, and Levi was left standing by himself. It was a bad time to talk to Joshua because they had to work in pairs, and Levi was the odd man out. He grabbed a rag and wiped down the benches to get them ready for the men to take. Chapter 5. It was the Monday after the wedding, and time for work at the Fuller's joinery workshop. Hazel and Isaac had gone visiting many of Isaac's relatives in 3 different communities. They'd be gone for 2 weeks. Levi drove his own buggy to work rather than go with his brothers in their father's oversized buggy. He planned to leave a little early that afternoon, in the hope he would catch Lucy as she left the store where she worked. More than anything, he wanted to talk to her to clear the air between them. "It's quiet without Hazel and Isaac here," Joshua said. "Yeah, it is. We've only just gotten here," Samuel said. "You have to do Isaac's job today, Levi. He showed you what to do, didn't he?" "Dad, I've been doing his job for the last 2 weeks." His father chuckled. "Okay, but don't forget you have to make all the appointments today." "It's all under control. I've got my day planned out. Return emails, make new appointments, and then go out and do my quotes. Isaac's already made some appointments, and the rest I made myself." The bishop had allowed businesses the use of electrical power, computers, and cell phones to enable them to be competitive. As Levi sat down behind the computer in Hazel's office, Benjamin poked his head through the door. Lucy should learn to do Hazel's job. Levi looked up while the computer booted up. "Why's that?" "Hazel will have babies and she'll want to stay home and play with them." Timothy joined Benjamin at the door. "You don't play with babies." "Yeah, you do," Benjamin replied. "You're a kid yourself, that's why you'd play with babies," Timothy said. Levi chuckled. "It's not a job that just anybody can do. Hazel's good with numbers and I'm not sure that Lucy is." "She can learn, can't she?" Benjamin said. "Let's just wait until the time comes. They've only just gotten married. They might not have a baby right away." "Back to work," Mr. Fuller said as he walked through the front door toward them. The two younger brothers hurried away, leaving Levi to do his job. What did they want? He shook his head, and a quiet smile met his lips. They thought I should have Lucy trained, ready to take over Hazel's job. Is Hazel quitting? Nay. They thought that she'd have babies soon and not want to work here anymore, sooner or later. I hadn't thought of that. I'm sure she can do both in some capacity. Maybe she'd work for us part-time when that time comes, Levi said. Mr. Fuller rubbed his graying beard. It's worked out well with Hazel being here. Does Lucy know about bookkeeping? Nay. She's happy where she is doing the job she's got. Working in a store? Yeah. When you get married, will you be happy with her working there, or would you rather she work here? Levi was now annoyed with his brothers for bringing up the subject. We can't give everyone jobs, Dad. I don't know about bookwork, but even I know we've got to have a steady cash flow. His father slowly nodded. Well, I'm happy for her to do whatever makes her happy. Working's not about happiness. Levi knew as soon as the words escaped his mouth that he'd said the wrong thing to his father. His father was of the generation that didn't understand one could find fulfillment or happiness in work. It was all about providing for one's family. Levi didn't see why both couldn't happen simultaneously. I know, Dad. You're right. With that, his father headed back to his own office right next door. Levi picked up the phone's receiver and made his first call of the day. Lucy loved working at the craft store, where they sold many kinds of craft-making materials and fabrics. They also sold Amish dolls, needlework, and quilts on consignment. Their main trade was from tourists, and Lucy met many people from all over the country as they stopped by the store. Mrs. Trantor was strict, but she was also a fair boss. There were 6 girls who worked in the store, and Lucy had been promoted to do the schedules and to look after all the consignment pieces. Before Lucy locked up for the day, she called Mary Lou on the cell phone number she'd given her. Lucy had only called her once before, and she'd had to leave a message. For some reason, she didn't expect Mary Lou to answer this time either, and she was surprised when it was answered on the second ring. Mary Lou, it's Lucy. Hi, Lucy. What's happening? Lucy was slightly taken aback that Mary Lou sounded so chirpy. I'm just calling to see how you are. I'm fine. How are you? I'm missing you. It's just not the same without you. Aw, that's nice. You sound a little flat. Is anything wrong? Mary Lou asked. Nay, everything's okay. Are you sure? Lucy took a deep breath. Mary Lou knew her well enough to hear in her voice that she was distressed. I've had a big argument with Levi, and I was just wondering. You what? We had an argument. That's no good, but I kind of saw it coming. I never really thought the two of you would work. I'm surprised the two of you lasted this long. Lucy was shocked at Mary Lou's words. We're still together. Oh, then maybe I shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry. That's okay. I like to know what you think. Phew. Anyway, I'm glad you called. Why's that? I've got news. Good news, I hope. Yeah, it is. My news is that I'm thinking about coming back. Really? Yeah. I've been thinking about it, and I can't let Isaac and what happened stand in the way of my salvation. Lucy knew Mary Lou would have to go through a shunning if she came back, and the bishop would make a decision whether she should confess her sins in front of the congregation. Lucy knew of one person who'd returned and had gone through that process. It had been worth it, that person said, to come back into the fold. I'm so happy you're coming back. I was hoping that was what you were going to say. I've been praying you'd return soon. I've missed you so much. I always thought I'd return. I knew I would, that's what I mean. That was opposite to what she'd told Lucy weeks before, but Mary Lou was entitled to change her mind. Does anyone else know? Lucy asked. Nay, you're the first person I've told. Remember, I said I'm only thinking about it. I know you'll come back. You wouldn't have said it if you weren't going to do it. Anyway, I bet not much has changed. Mary Lou's voice rang with laughter. Apart from me having a big fight with Levi, nothing much has changed. But you're still together, you said. Lucy sighed when the argument came to mind. I'm not sure what's happening. Are you together or aren't you? I guess we'll have to talk and figure things out. I haven't spoken to him since the wedding. I see. I'm sure things will be okay. Your parents will be pleased you're coming back. I said I was thinking about it. When will you make up your mind? Maybe in a couple of days. Why don't you call me back then? I'll make a decision by then. Okay, I'll call you back in 2 days around this same time of day when I'm finished with work. I do hope you'll come back. I kind of already made up my mind that I will, but I just don't want to rush into anything because of the shunning. That is, if the bishop lets me back at all. I'm sure he will if you confess and all that. See what I mean? It's a big decision. I know, but please come back. We won't be able to talk for a while if I'm shunned. I know, but that will pass. It'll go quickly, Lucy said. If I come back, you should go on Rumspringa and take over my room here. You'll have fun and you'll be educated. What can you say to your children about the outside world if you haven't experienced it for yourself? You should try it. If I'd gone on Rumspringa before I was baptized, things would have been different for me now, in a good way. Lucy knew that Mary Lou was staying in a small apartment with 2 other girls who were on Rumspringa. Things hadn't worked out with the man she'd left the community for. I don't want to leave. I'm happy here. I've got no interest in anything the world has to offer. I'm happy just as I am, and I don't think I have to experience things to give advice on them. Please yourself. It was just a thought. I'll have to go before it gets dark. Dad's collecting me and I'm calling you from work. Okay, I'll speak to you in 2 days' time. Chapter 6. After Lucy hung up the receiver, she placed the money in the tin. Her employer, Mrs. Trantor, allowed the girls to use the phone as long as they put some money in the tin provided, and as long as they didn't call anyone during their working hours. Lucy stared at the phone and was tempted to call the phone in the Fuller's barn, hoping Levi would be the one to answer it. After she thought about it some more, she resisted. He hadn't made any attempt to contact her, and she didn't want to be the first one to make the move. Plus, she was afraid Mrs. Fuller might answer the phone. She stood up, pulled on her black cape to keep out the cold, and headed out of the building to wait for her ride. Seeing a buggy with a chestnut horse parked out front, she hurried over to it, and then stopped still when she realized it wasn't her father's horse at all. It was Levi's. Levi jumped out of the buggy and took a few steps toward her. "Hello, Lucy." He looked a little timid, and she knew it would have been hard for him to make that first move after the words they'd had. "Hello. I've come here to allow you to apologize." She smiled at his good-hearted attempt at humor. "Apologize for what?" "Our argument the other day." It wasn't really an argument, it was a difference of opinion. That difference of opinion became rather heated, and in my mind it turned into an argument. "I can't help what goes on in your mind." He looked down at the ground. "You're making this very difficult." "What am I making difficult?" "I don't want us to have any arguments. I want things to be good between us. At the wedding I was just talking about Mary Lou and saying I don't think she was fairly treated, and I'm entitled to my opinion." "What does Mary Lou have to do with anything?" Lucy frowned at him. "You don't even remember the argument we had?" He shook his head. "Don't make this more difficult than it is." "So you didn't come here to apologize?" "Nay, not really. I came here to talk about our differences and to patch things up. Mary Lou and her leaving the community should have nothing to do with us. I was making a comment about what I think. Can't you respect that my opinion might be different than yours? Your opinion isn't based on fact. If it was based on fact, I would respect your opinion." Lucy huffed and pulled her cape tighter around her. Suddenly, she looked over his shoulder at an approaching buggy. "Here's my father." Levi kept his eyes fixed on her. "Lucy, we need to sort this out." "I know I want to, but what's the use? We'll never agree on this. We don't need to let this come between us, do we?" Lucy remembered Mary Lou's words. If her best friend didn't think Levi was a good match for her, maybe he wasn't. Perhaps there was someone God had who was more suitable. "I'm sorry. I have to go." She walked past him. "When will we talk again?" She ignored him and walked faster to meet her father's buggy. For the next 2 days, Lucy did the best she could to put Levi out of her mind. Then as she was closing up shop, she called Mary Lou again and hoped her friend had made a decision. Mary Lou must have been waiting for her call, because she answered almost immediately. The first thing Mary Lou said before she even said hello was that she was coming back to the community. Lucy squealed. "I'm so pleased." Mary Lou continued, "But only if you'll come and talk to the bishop with me." "Of course I will. I'll be happy to go with you, but I'm sure he'll want to speak to you by yourself." "Good, Denka. And what else is happening? How are you doing with Levi?" "Things are awkward between us." "That's no good." Lucy sighed. "I think you were right about him." "Oh, Lucy, I'm so sorry to hear that. If we can't agree on things, that means we aren't suited." "That's right. You just weren't suited. I saw that a long time ago, but I didn't want to say anything until you saw it for yourself." "You saw it a long time ago?" "Yeah, I did," Mary Lou said. "I had no idea. We always got along so well, and had never even had an argument." "Really?" "Yeah. I was sure we had the perfect relationship." "I don't know why you thought that. You're intelligent and you think things through. Whereas Levi just coasts along in life, following along like every other second oldest brother." Mary Lou giggled. Lucy wasn't sure what her friend was laughing at. She saw nothing funny about it. "Do you think so? I hadn't really noticed that." "Trust me, I've noticed it, but I guess I've been closer to all the Fuller brothers and I've known them all a lot longer than you." "I guess that's true. I know it's upsetting, but don't be sad. Now you're free for when the right man comes along." "I don't want to even think about anything like that. It's far too soon for me to think about anybody else." "Nonsense. They say if you fall off a horse, you should get right back on." Lucy felt a little better. "I don't know about that. Anyway, when are you coming back?" "On Tuesday. I'm just annoyed that I have to keep paying for my room for another 3 weeks. Are you sure you don't want to go on Rumspringa?" Lucy couldn't think of anything worse. She'd be away from her family and the community. "I'm positive I don't want to." Mary Lou sighed loudly. "Don't you want me around when you come back?" Lucy asked. "Yeah, it'll be fun, and we can do things together now that we're both single." "I suppose." Mary Lou continued, "Hopefully they'll find someone for my room soon." "You've still got the job at the coffee shop, haven't you?" Lucy asked. "I do. I've been working there the whole time. I just hate paying rent when I don't have to. I don't have to pay anything at home." "Nothing." "That's right, nothing." "Not even board?" Lucy asked. "Nothing, and not even food." Mary Lou chuckled. "I should never have left." "Yeah, that sounds like a good deal to me. I had to pay board as soon as I got a job, because my parents want me to be responsible with money. My parents are pleased I'm coming back." "Of course they would be. I told you that." "And you'll still come with me to see the bishop when I get back?" Mary Lou asked. "I'll be shunned as sure as anything." "Yeah, you will, I'd reckon. I'll come with you, just name the time and the day. I'll stop by as soon as I'm back in the community. I look forward to seeing you." "Me too." Lucy hung up the phone's receiver. Interesting, she thought. Mary Lou left the community for a man, and she'd had no intention of returning. Maybe Mary Lou had just needed that time away from the community to get her head straightened out after what had happened with Isaac. Chapter 7. Mary Lou's here, Lucy's youngest sister Catherine called out on Tuesday afternoon when Lucy had just gotten home from work. Lucy had known Mary Lou was coming back on Tuesday, but hadn't expected to see her on the very same day she'd returned. She headed out to meet Mary Lou. Mary Lou jumped down from her buggy wearing her Amish clothing. Lucy noticed immediately, and the two girls hugged. "It's so good to see you. I thought when you left you'd never be back." Mary Lou jumped back. "Why would you ever think that?" Lucy giggled. "Because that's exactly what you said when you left." I never said that." Lucy clearly remembered that was exactly what Mary Lou had said, but there was no point in getting into an argument about it. Lucy knew that Mary Lou handled the truth loosely, but still she was a good friend. "Can you stay for dinner?" "Nay, I've come to take you to talk to the bishop with me." Right now? Yeah. You said you'd come with me, remember? I thought I'd have some notice. You haven't given me any, and I've had a long day at work. I wish you'd told me earlier. You promised me. Mary Lou opened her eyes wide. I said I was coming back on Tuesday. I clearly remember telling you that. Lucy sighed. Do you have to go right now? He's expecting us, both of us. Me too. Mary Lou nodded. Okay, I'll just tell Ma'am where I'm going. Good. I'll wait in the buggy. Lucy found her mother in the kitchen, quickly explained the situation, and asked her to keep her dinner aside. Then she headed back out to join Mary Lou. As soon as Lucy was sitting beside her in the buggy, Mary Lou urged her horse onward. What happened with you and Levi? Nothing. Is it over? Yeah, it's over probably, Lucy said. Oh, I'm very sorry, but I knew it would be over. Well, as you said, now I'm free for the right man to come along. That's right. And he will come along. You're smart, you're intelligent, and you are very pretty, so you need a man who's the same as that. Lucy gave a little giggle. Do you think so? Pretty? Really? Yeah, anyone would think so. Danka, Mary Lou. That makes me feel a little better. Well, it's true. I'm glad you're coming to the bishop's house with me today. He always makes me feel a little nervous. I know what you mean. I sometimes feel that way too with him, but it was nice of them to let Hazel live there with them for so long. Well, it wasn't long because she married Isaac, but they would have had her there longer. Do you mind if you don't mention her name? Lucy leaned back in her seat a little. I'm sorry. I'm working on my feelings. I still haven't quite gotten to the place where I forgive her for what happened. I can understand that. Did you like being out in the world? I suppose it was okay. What happened between you and the guy you left the community for? Mary Lou's mouth fell open, and she slowly turned and glared at Lucy. That's not how it happened at all. I didn't leave for a man. Well, what happened with him? I just want you to get things right before you open your big mouth and say the wrong thing in front of someone. Lucy stared wide-eyed at Mary Lou, wondering why she was suddenly being so horrid. Firstly, I don't have a big mouth, and secondly, who would I tell? The bishop for one. He would have heard the same talk as I have. Hearing talk around is different from hearing talk from someone who's close to me, like you are. I see what you mean. I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything rude by what I said before about you having a big mouth. You don't have one at all. You've never spread rumors. I'm glad you know that. I do. Mary Lou squirmed in her seat. I'm just nervous about talking to the bishop, that's all, and don't mention a man. I won't, but you'll have to come clean so you'll have a chance of coming back. I'll be shunned for a time. No one will be able to talk with me or eat with me, so what? That won't bother me. It's not like getting a whipping or something, and if people think badly of me, that's not my problem. Mary Lou secured her horse, and while she was doing that, Lucy looked over at the bishop's house. The doors were closed. Well, come on. What are you waiting for? Mary Lou asked. Lucy hadn't seen that Mary Lou had finished tending to the horse. I was waiting for you. I'm ready. You lead the way, Lucy said. Mary Lou took the time to smooth down her dress and adjust her prayer cap, tying the strings under her chin. How do I look? Mary Lou asked as she spun around to face Lucy. You look fine. Mary Lou strode toward the house and then pounded on the door. While they waited, Lucy considered her own appearance. She too smoothed down her dress and quickly tied her cap strings underneath her chin. Just as she'd finished, Ruth, the bishop's wife, opened the door. Mary Lou and Lucy. What a surprise. Lucy turned to stare at Mary Lou. There had been no appointment made to see the bishop. Mary Lou had lied. I was hoping to see Bishop John about returning, Mary Lou said. Of course, come in. You caught us just in time before we started dinner. I'll try not to be too long, Mary Lou said. Do you want to see him as well, Lucy? Both of you. The bishop's wife looked from one to the other. Mary Lou wants to see him, but I've come to keep her company, Lucy said. She smiled at them, looking from one to the other. Very well, this way. She showed them into the living room where the bishop sat reading his large black Bible. He took off his reading glasses as he looked up. "What can I do for you girls?" He squinted. "Is that you, Mary Lou?" "Yeah, it's Mary Lou and Lucy," Ruth said before she moved to stand behind her husband. "I'd like to come back to the community. That's why I'm here, to ask for forgiveness and take any punishments that are required," Mary Lou said. The bishop's eyes flicked over Mary Lou's cap, dress, and apron. "I can see you expect to come back by what you're wearing." Mary Lou looked pleased with herself. "I've been looking forward to coming back. I should never have left. I've searched my mind and my heart. God has shown me the wickedness inside me." "That is good news." He looked over at Lucy. "Ruth can fix something for you in the kitchen, Lucy." "Nay, please, can she stay? She's my very best friend, and I'd like her to be here for moral support." He rubbed his eyes. "You haven't been baptized, have you?" "Yeah, I was baptized a couple years ago." "I'm sorry, I'd forgotten that." While the bishop was telling them about the necessary process, and about the importance of rejoining the community, and the necessity of making that a firm decision, Lucy's mind wandered. Mary Lou had definitely told her she made an appointment to see the bishop. She told Mary Lou she was tired, and before they got there would have been a good time for Mary Lou to mention that no appointment had been made. She pushed her annoyance aside and tried to concentrate on what the bishop said. For her own sake, she tried to look past Mary Lou's failings. "Will I be shunned?" Mary Lou suddenly asked. "You'll have to confess on this next Sunday all of your sins and why you left us. Then, there'll be a period of shunning. That's our way." "I know." While the bishop asked Mary Lou questions, Ruth talked quietly with Lucy. "How are your parents?" "Good, Denka." "And your job?" "I love it there. Mrs. Trantor is so good to all us girls. 4 of the workers there were Amish girls." "Have you had dinner yet?" "Nay, but Ma'am is keeping it hot for me." "That's good." All of a sudden Lucy heard Mary Lou say, "I better go now because Lucy's in a hurry to get home." Lucy turned to Mary Lou. "I'm sorry, but if I'd known you hadn't made an appointment to see Bishop John, that first would have stayed at home. If you had made an appointment, I would have had time to arrange things better." "What are you talking about, Lucy?" Mary Lou asked. "I thought you told me when you came to get me that you'd made an appointment to see the bishop, and then when I get here I find out no appointment was made." "Never mind." Mary Lou shook her head dismissively at Lucy. "If you have to go, you have to go," Ruth said. "Stop by another time. You do look tired, Lucy." "I am." Bishop John said, "I need to see you before the Sunday meeting, Mary Lou. I want you to come by yourself, and set aside half an hour for the visit. You can make your confession this very Sunday." "Ja, Denka. I will. The sooner, the better. I need to get rid of this burden I've been carrying around. I will accept the shunning." "We will go over what is to happen on Sunday," the bishop said. Mary Lou nodded, looking suitably solemn. "Okay." After they stood up, Ruth showed them to the door, and when the girls reached the buggy, Ruth closed the door. Lucy could see that Mary Lou was upset. She knew it wouldn't be long before Mary Lou vented her anger. "That was rude to cut the visit short. You were the one who said you had to take me home. I was happy to stay. And it was you who said you'd made an appointment, and then told them you had to take me home. Don't blame me. I told you I was tired after a long day at work. Everyone's had a long day at work. You're not the only one. I thought you would be more supportive." "I am supportive. I came here with you, didn't I? And they weren't expecting either of us, and that means you lied to me." Lucy normally wasn't confrontational, but she didn't like being deceived. She looked at the road ahead and folded her arms across her chest. Mary Lou didn't answer for a while. "I'm sorry for what I did, Lucy. I just feel all jumbled up since I've come back to the community. Being on my own after 2 years of being with Isaac hasn't been easy. I try not to let it upset me, but it does." "That's okay. I can understand." Now that her friend had apologized, Lucy could easily look past her flaws and shortcomings, since she had plenty of her own. "Hazel's mother must have left their house already," Mary Lou said. She was staying at the bishop's house, along with Hazel's aunt and uncle, but only until a couple days after Hazel's wedding. Mary Lou went quiet, and Lucy wondered if she'd been hoping to run into Hazel's relations at the bishop's house. Lucy had to ask herself, was that what the rush to see the bishop was all about? Chapter 8. At the next Sunday meeting, Lucy saw that Hazel and Isaac had come back from visiting already. At the end of the sermon, Mary Lou had to stand up and confess her sins. It was an embarrassing moment for her, and Lucy could see that she seemed genuinely repentant. She was to be shunned for a 2-week period. It gave the bishop a good reason to talk about the beneficial process of shunning, based on the scriptures. Although it was embarrassing for Mary Lou, everything would be made right. Besides, Mary Lou was tough and would be able to handle it. When the meeting was over, Lucy hurried over to speak with Hazel outside the house where the service was held. "Hi, Hazel. Did you enjoy your time away?" "I did. We had a good time, and I saw a lot of places I'd never been to. And I met lots of relatives. It will take some time to get used to being part of such a large family." "Good, I'm glad you had a good trip. Will you and Levi be able to make it to dinner on Tuesday night?" "I think so. I'll ask him. Just let me know tomorrow. You don't have to let me know today. Are you having a few people over, or just us?" Lucy knew Hazel must have had no idea about her and Levi. "Just the two of you at the moment." Ivy Fuller headed over toward them, and Lucy made the excuse to Hazel that she had to catch someone before they left. She didn't want to get stuck talking to Levi's mother. Neither did she want to talk to Levi lately, but she wouldn't be able to avoid talking to him for much longer. She'd have to have a serious talk with Levi about whether they were going to let people know that they were no longer a couple, or were they going to keep up the pretense for a while longer. She didn't care either way. Lucy found Levi taking a plate from the end of the table to help himself to some food. Seeing that everyone else was at the other end of the long table, she took the opportunity to talk with him. "There you are." He swung around. "Lucy." "Yeah, it's me. We've been invited to Isaac and Hazel's house for dinner on Tuesday night." "And what did you say? Did you accept the invitation for us?" "I said I'd ask you if you were free." He put the plate down, leaned one arm on the table and rested the other hand on his hip. "So, you're leaving it for me to tell everybody?" "I didn't know what you wanted to do. You're the first boyfriend I've had, and I thought you would be the only one. Anyway, that doesn't matter anymore. I don't know the right way to do things." "It doesn't matter to me. Do you want me to tell people?" he asked. She shrugged her shoulders. She didn't want to be the one to say that things were finally over. If they started telling people, then it would all become real. "I suppose we could just have a few more days without telling people, and just go to Isaac's house as though we're still together. We could do that, couldn't we?" She nodded. "Okay. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother me." "It's settled then. Unless you have some reason that you'd rather not have everyone think we're still together." "I have no reason at all." "Do you?" She wondered whether Nella would be a reason. "Nay," he said. "So if we're both okay with it, let's do it," she said. "Okay. Great. I'll meet you there at 7. He tipped his head to one side. "Where will you meet me?" "Isaac and Hazel's place at 7 o'clock on Tuesday night." He scratched his nose. "It'll look very strange if we arrive separately. How about I collect you from your house at 6:30, and then we'll travel together and then I'll drive you home afterward?" "Okay. That would look more believable. I'll see you on Tuesday night." "All right." Lucy walked around to the other side of the table and took a plate, and then she joined the queue of people helping themselves to food. After her plate was full, she looked around for a space to sit at one of the tables, and it was then that she saw Mary Lou sitting by herself because her shunning had begun. Not too far away, she saw Isaac and Hazel. She could only imagine how awkward it was for Isaac to see Mary Lou, his old girlfriend, back in the community. Chapter 9. As planned, Levi collected Lucy on Tuesday night for the dinner at Hazel and Isaac's house. Barely a word was said on the drive over there. It was awkward, and Lucy wondered what was going through Levi's mind. She had hoped he'd apologize, so that things would be resolved between them by the time they got to Hazel and Isaac's house. When he stopped the buggy by the house, Lucy saw another 3 buggies outside. "Is that your father's buggy?" "Yeah, my folks have been invited to dinner." I thought it was just the two of us. Nay, and it's more than just Mam and Dad by the look of all the buggies. What about your brothers? None of them were invited. Levi's mother and father being there added to her nerves. It would be an awkward dinner. Don't worry, I still haven't told anyone anything. We'll just have to act as though things are fine between us, he said. Okay. By his words, Lucy knew she wouldn't be receiving an apology anytime soon. Both Hazel and Isaac came outside to greet them and waited on the porch for them. When they got inside, they found out that besides Levi's mother and father, the bishop and his wife were there along with another two couples. After Lucy and Levi said hello to everyone, Lucy asked, "Can I help you in the kitchen, Hazel?" "Ja, denke. I'll need some help serving." Lucy could tell that Hazel was nervous. It couldn't have been easy to go from an isolated life living with her mother to entertaining her husband's parents and the bishop and his wife. Levi had told her snippets of Hazel's past. She wouldn't have had a lot of experience serving guests, especially this many at once. Soon everyone was seated around the long table in the room adjacent to the kitchen, and after they said a prayer of thanks for the food, Hazel was the first to speak. "I have some exciting news." Lucy stared at Hazel and wondered whether she would say she was already pregnant, but it would be too early to know. "My mother is coming to live with us soon," Hazel announced. "That's wonderful news," Mrs. Fuller said. "I'm so happy for you, Hazel," Ruth said while the others murmured their agreement. Isaac said, "Yeah, I've just about got the Großdaddy house ready, and when the walls go up, Hazel wants to paint them. I told her I'd do it, but she insists." "I like painting," Hazel said over the rumbles of laughter. "Anyway, everyone, help yourselves." While bowls of food were passed around, Mrs. Fuller said to Hazel, "Perhaps Lucy can help you get the place ready for Judy." Lucy looked directly at Mrs. Fuller, wondering why she had volunteered her. Hazel swung her body around to face Lucy. "Oh, would you, Lucy? That would be such fun." When she saw how excited Hazel was, she knew she would feel dreadful refusing. Before she could answer, Levi butted in. "Lucy would love to, wouldn't you, Lucy?" Lucy knew Levi had only said that to be annoying, and she wouldn't let him see that what he said bothered her. "Yeah, I'd love to help. I couldn't think of anything better. I love painting too, and helping to get the Großdaddy house ready sounds exciting. We could even sew the curtains, Hazel." "Okay, Denka. That's lovely of you to help, Lucy," Ruth said. "I'll help as much as I can." Lucy smiled at the bishop's wife. "You've done a fine job of cooking all this lovely food, Hazel," her new mother-in-law said. "Denka, I hope it tastes all right. It's all of Isaac's favorite food choices." "She's a good cook," Isaac said with a smile. From the way they interacted, Lucy saw that Hazel was better suited to Isaac than Mary Lou had ever been. There was a mixture of adoration and wonder in his eyes, and he'd never looked that way at Mary Lou. The dinner lasted a long time, and then dessert was served. After that, there was coffee served in the living room. Lucy and Levi were the first to leave. When they climbed into the buggy, Levi asked, "Were you really pleased about helping Hazel?" "Yeah, of course. It sounds like so much fun." He scratched his neck and then turned his horse to face the road. "I didn't think you would like to do anything like that. And I didn't think you were a fan of Hazel's." He clicked the horse onward. "I wasn't at the start, but now I can see she's a sweet girl." "So you no longer think my brother made a dreadful mistake?" he asked. "Nay. It's plain to see he loves Hazel. I can see that by the way he looks at her, and Hazel adores him too. I just think he showed poor judgment the way he treated Mary Lou." "Are we back onto this subject again? I don't think Mary Lou suffered too much. She's not being shunned for that long." "When did you talk to her?" Lucy asked. "Can't say that I remember. Oh, that's right, she was getting something to eat at the cafe my brothers and I go to for lunch. It was Friday, I think. That must have been her day off, but I thought she worked 5 days a week. It sounds very suspicious to me." He drew back. "You mean you don't believe me?" "I didn't say that." "You mean you don't believe Mary Lou?" "Forget I said anything." She shook her head and turned away from him. "Nay, you must have meant something." "I did, but I just meant that it doesn't seem like a coincidence that she bumped into you. Have you ever seen her at lunchtime before?" "Nay. And that's the place you go to every day to get lunch?" He fixed his lips tightly together. You're so suspicious. You didn't like Hazel at the start, and now you're suspicious of your best friend. She's been your friend since we were all in school. It seems you're not happy with anyone. Did you ever stop to think that it might not be everybody else, it might be you? What might be me? It seems no one can do anything right around you. You're upset with me and upset with everything I do, and neither can anyone else do anything right. Lucy just wanted the horse to go faster so she could get home quicker. She didn't know what was going on lately. Levi and she always used to know what each other was thinking, and now they were having one disagreement after another. He continued, Mary Lou said you didn't like Hazel and you were being mean to her. Lucy's mouth fell open and she couldn't believe her ears. What did you just say? She said you're being mean to her, and you don't even like Hazel. You're just pretending to like Hazel. Well, that's not true. Mary Lou and I are the best of friends, and I just told you I'm starting to like Hazel. Starting to? I don't know why you didn't like Hazel from the beginning. Did you hear me? I just said Mary Lou and I are the best of friends. She had no reason to say that. Well, she said it. I'm not making it up. Lucy knew he wasn't making it up. Mary Lou must have been trying to get in between them. Then it dawned on her how Mary Lou had kept pressing her and asking her what the situation was in her relationship with Levi. Mary Lou was the only one who knew they weren't together right now. If Mary Lou was once in love with Isaac, maybe she figured the next best thing was his brother closest to him in age. Levi turned from the main road onto her parents' property and took her right up to the house. Danka for taking me and bringing me back again. You're welcome. Where do things stand from here, he asked. Between you and me? Yeah. She shook her head. I can't believe you just told me what Mary Lou said. You were talking about me behind my back. She was saying mean things about me, and you didn't even stand up for me. I tried. I told her it wasn't true about you, and then she gave me examples of what was said. What could I say then? Lucy couldn't believe her ears. Like what? What examples did she give? I don't exactly remember now, but she repeated what you said about a few things. What you said about me, things you said to her. I don't know what you're talking about. You'll have to give me some examples. I don't remember. Well, think hard, Lucy said. From what she said, it seemed you were stirring up trouble between Mary Lou and Isaac. What? I never did. She didn't think you were being a good friend. What? Did she mention how I visited the bishop with her, to talk about her returning to the community? Yeah. That's right. She said she regretted asking you because you looked bored the whole time, and even Ruth asked you if you were tired. That's partly right, but I wasn't bored, I was tired. When we talked on the phone, I agreed to go to the bishop with her, and then one day after I'd had a long day at work, she came to the house just as I was about to help Ma'am with the dinner and said she was on her way to meet with the bishop right then. I'd given my word I was going with her to the bishop, but she hadn't told me when she was going. I had to drop everything and go. It was a perfectly reasonable explanation, and she hoped that Levi would see that. She didn't tell me that part. She conveniently left that out, Lucy thought. If she said that out aloud, Levi might not appreciate it. Well, good night, Levi. She deliberately didn't answer his previous question about where their relationship stood. She had no idea, but unless he started backing her up when others gossiped about her, they had no future. Good night, he called after her. Had he even realized that she hadn't answered his question? It can't have been very important to him, she thought, as she pushed open her front door. Levi headed his horse and buggy back down Lucy's driveway. He was disappointed in the way Lucy was behaving. She hadn't even bothered to answer his question about their relationship. Instead, she talked about something else and ignored his question completely. He glanced back at her silhouette as she slipped through her front door. At the beginning of their relationship she'd seemed sweet and kind, but now he'd begun to wonder whether there was another side to her. Lucy was right about one thing, though. It was kind of suspicious how Mary Lou had appeared where she knew he and the boys went to lunch every day. Mary Lou liked him, he knew that, he saw it in her eyes, but it irked him that Lucy was acting so suspicious of everyone. It was unlike the Lucy he thought he knew. Mary Lou was nothing but a friend, and she'd been a good part of the Fuller household for a long time. Levi's head was a whirl. Had Mary Lou opened his eyes to Lucy, or did Mary Lou have her own agenda for wanting him to believe the worst of Lucy? Where marriage was concerned, he had to make the right choice. In his heart he knew he loved Lucy, but he would still end things forever between them if she didn't have all the attributes he wanted in a wife. He had to be strong and level-headed with such a decision. In frustration, he loosened the shirt collar from around his neck and tossed his hat on the seat beside him. With one hand he held onto the reins and with the other he ruffled his hair. Breathing in the fresh night air, he tried to calm himself. What Mary Lou said about Lucy had bothered him. Mary Lou had made the important decision to return knowing she'd be shunned and suffer humiliation, and all Lucy could do at the bishop's house when she went with Mary Lou was show that she was bored. It was disappointing that she'd behaved like that, if what Mary Lou said was true. Lucy had given a pretty different view in her explanation. Levi doubted that Mary Lou would have lied about something right after she came back to the community. That was something that didn't seem likely. Maybe Mary Lou had told her about the appointment, and it had slipped Lucy's mind. That was worse still, because that meant that Mary Lou's salvation and being in right standing with God was not that important to Lucy. All Lucy had to say in her defense for forgetting that appointment with the bishop, and for her bored appearance, was to blame someone else. She didn't take responsibility for her actions. He might have been more inclined to believe all her excuses, and doubt Mary Lou's word if it hadn't been for the hesitation when his mother suggested she help Hazel paint. With his own eyes he had seen her reluctance to help, and that had reinforced the notion that Mary Lou had been telling the truth. He shook his head. He wanted to marry Lucy, that's what he'd always intended. Levi pressed his lips tightly together as he remembered what the word said about a good wife in Proverbs chapter 31. He wanted a woman who'd be kind and willing to help others. It baffled him why Lucy hadn't jumped at the chance to help Hazel, a woman she should have thought of as someone who would be her sister-in-law one day. Seeing his brother marry a sweet girl such as Hazel reinforced to him the importance of making the right choice. Chapter 10. Lucy walked into her house, and without looking at anybody she hurried up the stairs to her room and closed the door behind her. She pulled off her prayer cap, threw it on the bed, and slumped her numb body beside it. Sighing loudly, she rolled over onto her back and stared up at the ceiling. When she heard her bedroom door open, she looked over and saw Adeline, her sister closest to her in age. "Are you okay, Lucy?" "Nee, I'm not." "Come in and shut the door." Adeline slipped through the doorway, quietly closed the door and sat down beside her. Lucy rolled over and sat up with another loud sigh. "I was suspicious for a while, but now I know for certain that Mary Lou has been working against me. She's not my friend at all." Adeline opened her eyes wide. "Why, what happened?" "Where do I start?" Lucy rubbed her face in her hands. "Before she came back, I called her a couple of times and told her I'd had a bit of an argument with Levi, and then she kept asking and asking me if we were over. Then she tried to convince me he wasn't very good for me, and then I found out she was saying untrue things about me to Levi." Adeline gasped. "She was trying to break up the two of you?" "We were kind of already having issues, but she was trying to see to it that we stayed that way." Adeline shook her head. "What are you going to do?" "I have no idea. I'm so upset. I didn't even want to like Hazel because Mary Lou was my friend and I felt sorry for her, but now I feel bad for not liking Hazel immediately. What do you think I should do? Are you back together with him yet?" "Nay." "Is he being swayed by what Mary Lou is saying?" "I don't know, I think he was at first. I don't know what he's thinking now." Lucy reached behind her head and took the pins out of her hair and let it fall down. "If he's stupid enough to believe her, just let her have him. You want someone who's smart enough to see past that woman's tricks. Anyway, she can't make any more trouble for 2 more weeks." "I suppose you're right, but if he hasn't come across a woman like that before, how would he know how to deal with her?" Adeline clicked her tongue. "I can't believe she would do something like that." "Me either." Lucy sighed. "I thought she was my very best friend and now I know she can't care about me at all." "She's obviously not your friend, she's your enemy. And you're right, she doesn't care about you. Mary Lou only cares about herself." "I know." Lucy was sad that she'd trusted Mary Lou for so long. "I know what she's like now. I just hope she hasn't ruined things completely with me and Levi. At least you know what she's like now. Lucy nodded. The next night, after a hectic day of work, Levi skipped dinner and instead took his horse and buggy out for a couple of hours to clear his head. He hoped time alone would make him feel better. After having enough time to think and pray, he returned home. While he was busy rubbing his horse down, he noticed Joshua walking into the barn with something in his hand. "Where have you been?" Joshua bit into the apple he was carrying. "Just out." Levi wasn't in the mood to talk. All he wanted to do was think about Lucy and how they could make things better. He couldn't let her go. "I've been wondering, why do you keep asking me questions and then talking about Nella? Can we talk later? I'm not in the mood right now." "Why? What's happened?" He walked closer, and by the light in the barn he had a good look at his brother. "You look dreadful." "Thanks a lot," Levi replied. "I didn't mean it like that. Just go inside and give me a few minutes. Make me a cup of hot tea, and I'll talk to you in the kitchen." "Okay, I'll do that." As soon as Joshua walked away, Levi felt bad about sending him off. Joshua rarely wanted to talk, so he should have encouraged him rather than shutting him down. With so many brothers, it was always hard to get time alone, but he didn't like being selfish when a younger brother wanted a little of his time. After he finished with his horse, he leaned against the stable door and closed his eyes. How did things go so wrong between him and Lucy? She had the wrong idea about his brother, probably from what Mary Lou had told her, but he couldn't bring himself to tell her the truth about Mary Lou having been seen kissing an Englisher while she was still dating Isaac. He was fairly certain Lucy didn't know, and if she didn't know, he didn't want to be the one to tell her. After he felt a little better, he headed into the house and found his brother in the kitchen. His mother was fussing around, making them hot tea. "We're okay, ma'am," Joshua insisted. "I'll get out of your way in a minute." She leaned down and picked something off the floor. "Oh dear. I'm still finding pieces of broken plate on the floor from when Hazel and Lucy dropped those plates on the morning of the wedding. I've washed the floor at least a dozen times since then, but I'm still finding pieces." "I can make the tea, ma'am," Levi said. "I'll do it." While their mother was around, they couldn't talk as freely as they wanted. After she poured the hot water into the teapot, she picked up a cloth and wiped down the kitchen countertop. "There, it should be ready now." She placed the teapot in front of them. They already had their mugs. "Danke, ma'am," Joshua said. "Ja, danke, ma'am." "Do you want cookies?" Both men declined the offer of cookies. As their mother left the kitchen, Joshua poured the tea into the two mugs. "Are you sure you're okay?" Joshua asked. "I've just had a hard day. Nothing I want to talk about." "Okay. I just want to know why you keep talking to me about Nella. Do you like her better than Lucy now?" Levi straightened up. "Hey. It's nothing like that. Why are you talking to Nella all the time?" "I just had some things to talk with her about, that's all. It's not about you. You've mentioned her once or twice to me and I wondered why." Levi stared down into his drink and then looked back into his brother's face. He had nothing to lose by giving his brother a few hints that Nella liked him. "I just thought Nella might suit you. So I guess it is sort of about you." "Suit me?" "Yeah. You. Not me." Joshua chuckled. "You're going into the matchmaking game now?" "Not particularly. That would be too hard a game. In fact, it wouldn't be a game at all. That's serious stuff, arranging marriages." Joshua leaned back and linked his fingers together as he placed them on the table. "Has she said anything to you about me?" "Who?" "Nella, of course." Now Levi knew Joshua was trying to look like he wasn't interested in her. She might have. He didn't want to let the cat out of the bag completely. "Come on, tell me what's going on. Do you like her?" "I really can't say. The look on your face tells me everything I need to know." A smirk twitched at the corners of Joshua's lips. "Well, you don't have to ask then, do you? I'm guessing she likes me, and she just wanted to know whether I like her?" "It could be something like that." "So she likes me?" Joshua asked. "She might." Joshua smiled. "What do you think?" Levi asked, now becoming happy for Nella and his brother. The smile left Joshua's face. I think this is all childish if you don't tell me what's going on. Levi breathed out heavily. Maybe people find you quiet and unapproachable. Joshua frowned. People? People such as Nella? At the wedding dinner she brought her plate over and sat down by you, and then you got right up and left the table. And now I've said as much as I'm going to say. Joshua looked thoughtful as he drank a careful swallow of hot tea. Chapter 11. When Lucy came home from work, she helped her mother and younger sisters prepare the dinner. As her younger sisters talked about this and that, nothing in particular, all Lucy could think about was her tragic love life. Lucy, you're being so quiet, her mother said. Lucy continued setting the table for dinner. It's hard to get a word in with Adeline and Catherine talking. Adeline and Catherine both giggled. Did you find out why Levi was talking to Nella so much? Her mother asked. She looked up in surprise. Her mother didn't normally talk about private things in front of her younger sisters. Can't we talk about this later, ma'am? It's important, so I think we should talk about it now. And have you found out what Mary Lou is doing? Lucy looked over at Adeline, wondering if she had mentioned something to their mother. Adeline had her back turned making gravy, so Lucy couldn't gauge whether Adeline had said something or not. Her mother continued, Why don't you ask Levi over for dinner one night this week? Ma'am. Why not? It's just that there've been too many dinners lately. We were just at Hazel's for dinner the other night. How about I ask him in a few weeks' time or something? Why wait that long? Everybody has to eat dinner. That's true, but a big deal doesn't have to be made out of it. It's not a big deal to have your boyfriend for dinner at your parents' house. It's only a normal thing to do to have him stop by for dinner. Unless there's something you're not telling me. Is there? Lucy didn't look up. She kept placing the knives and the forks on the table. I just don't want to have anyone for dinner at the moment. That's okay, isn't it? As long as there's nothing wrong. Her father walked into the kitchen. Lucy said she doesn't like the idea of inviting him to dinner at the moment, so why don't we leave things at that? Lucy's father had to have overheard the conversation from the couch in the living room. As much as Lucy wanted to thank him, she didn't want to annoy her mother. Instead, she looked over at him and smiled. He had his eyes firmly fixed on Lucy's mother. Her mother said, All right. I'm just trying to do the right thing. He nodded. We can wait until she wants to have him here. Okay. We'll do that. I was just trying to be helpful. Throughout the evening meal that night, there was no further conversation about Levi, and Lucy was grateful. After dinner, when Lucy and her sisters were cleaning up the kitchen, Lucy took the opportunity to have a private talk with Adeline. Did you say anything to Ma'am about Mary Lou? I didn't. Catherine hurried over from wiping down the table and asked, What about Mary Lou? Nothing. Does she like Levi or something? Catherine asked. While Lucy put another plate on the drying rack, she wondered why Catherine would say such a thing. Just dry the plates. I'm wiping down the table. Well, do that then. Adeline held up her tea towel. I'm drying the plates. Catherine said, I'm sick of always being left out of things just because I'm the youngest. You tell Adeline things, so why don't you tell me? As she washed the plates, she considered telling Catherine. Is she old enough to understand and to be trusted with this? She wondered silently. She looked back over at her. Okay, but don't say anything to anyone. Of course I wouldn't. Who would I tell? I'd only tell Adeline, and she already knows, but I'm a bit upset because she didn't tell me. Catherine hurried over to Lucy. Lucy took a deep breath. It's just that Mary Lou's been mean and she's been trying to turn me off Levi, and then I found out that she said things to Levi about me. Tell her the rest, Adeline urged. Make sure you don't tell this to anyone, Catherine. Levi and I are kind of not together anymore. Catherine gasped. Does Ma'am know? Of course not. Nay, she doesn't, Adeline said. Well, she knows something because of what she said before. Lucy knew Catherine was right. Or had she just seen Levi talking to Mary Lou, or perhaps Nella a lot? I just think Ma'am's been watching everyone. I don't think she knows anything. That can't be good, Catherine said. That's just the way it is. And Levi and I have to work things out with each other, but inviting him to dinner is the last thing I want to do. Lucy shook her head. That won't help anything. You should tell me things like that. Why do you leave me out all the time? Catherine asked. I've told you now. I didn't really want to tell anybody. It's a private thing for Lucy, Adeline explained to Catherine. Lucy sighed. I used to tell Mary Lou everything, and then she turned against me. At least you know your sisters won't turn against you, Adeline said. That's true. When I say it out loud, it makes me sad about Mary Lou. I thought she would always be a good friend. Now I wonder if she ever was. Chapter 12. It was 2 weeks later on Sunday, and Lucy's parents had gone out visiting friends. Lucy and her 2 sisters stayed home, having a quiet Sunday afternoon. A buggy, Adeline called out. Lucy sat frozen stiff on the couch as her heart pounded. She hoped the buggy they heard was Levi's and he'd come to apologize. Catherine got up and looked out the window. It's Mary Lou. Adeline and Lucy immediately looked at one another. The last person Lucy wanted to visit her was Mary Lou. What does that troublemaker want? Catherine grumbled. Do you want us to say you're not home? Adeline asked. Lucy shook her head. I'd like to do that, but I can't have you lie for me. Catherine and I will go upstairs while you talk to her. That's not necessary. Is she still shunned? I don't want to get into trouble, Adeline said. Lucy said, her shunning finished about an hour ago. Come on, Catherine. Catherine got off the couch and together with Adeline walked up the stairs. Lucy walked outside to talk with Mary Lou as though nothing had changed between them. She knew that if she confronted Mary Lou about the things she'd said, she'd either deny them or tell Lucy she had gotten it all wrong. Fixing a smile on her face, she said, Hi, Mary Lou. Hello. My shunning's finally over and I'm officially back. It was harder than I thought it would be, and it taught me a few things. Good. Come on inside and I'll make you some hot chocolate. Okay. I need something to warm me up. When they got inside the house, Lucy was surprised to see her sisters back on the couch. They greeted Mary Lou nicely enough, as though nothing was wrong. Come through into the kitchen, Mary Lou. Lucy looked back at her sisters. Do you both want some hot chocolate? Yeah, please, they chorused. Okay, coming up. Mary Lou sat down at the kitchen table while Lucy poured milk into a saucepan, placed it on a hot plate, and then lit the gas stove. What have you been doing today? Mary Lou asked. Nothing much. Mom and Dad have gone out visiting. I thought you mightn't be home. When I got here, it looked like no one was home except for the smoke coming from the chimney. Everything was closed up. We're just trying to keep out the cold. Mary Lou frowned. It's warm in here. It must be working then. Why are you home and not out somewhere? Mary Lou asked. I didn't feel like it today. My sisters and I just wanted a quiet day. I get so tired after work sometimes I just like to have a quiet day doing nothing. I thought you'd be doing something with Levi today. Have you patched up your differences? There was no point telling Mary Lou anything other than the truth. Hey. So what's going on with you two? Everything's okay, I guess. It will be okay. But you had that big argument, and I thought you said you weren't together anymore. Nothing's been said about us not being together. You told me you weren't together. Mary Lou scrunched her nose just as Adeline walked into the kitchen. Hot chocolate ready yet? Mary Lou and Lucy turned their heads when they heard Adeline's voice. Adeline walked over and sat down next to Mary Lou. Not quite yet, Lucy said. We were just talking about Levi, Mary Lou told her. Oh. Levi and Lucy are doing better than ever. Mary Lou stared at her, and then she turned around and looked at Lucy. Is that true, Lucy? Lucy gulped and didn't want to lie. We'll be okay. Mary Lou tilted her head to one side. So you're not back together? Not completely, but it's confusing because we kind of never broke up. Nothing was said exactly. Mary Lou swung back around to face Adeline, who was still sitting next to her. Did you just lie to me, Adeline? It depends what you mean. I just wasn't sure how things were between them. You'll want to keep quiet then if you don't know, Mary Lou said. You're just wasting our time. Are you in a hurry? Adeline asked her. Nay, but neither do I like talking about nothing or talking to someone who has the wrong information and makes things up. Don't you have something better to do? Mary Lou's lips turned down at the corners. Without saying anything, Adeline got up and walked out of the kitchen. Lucy called after her. I'll bring your hot chocolate out soon, Adeline. Lucy was grateful that Adeline was trying to protect her, and upset with Mary Lou for her rudeness to her sister. What was that all about? Mary Lou asked when Adeline was gone. I'm not sure. Anyway, what have you been doing? Nothing much. I was just at home and I was bored and realized I haven't seen you very much lately. Of course not because of the shunning, but I'm glad you stopped by. I haven't asked, but how do you feel about Isaac being married? It must be hard for you. I've gotten used to the idea. I can't do anything about it and I can't change it. Sometimes it makes me angry, but I do my best not to dwell on it. I always thought it would be me who married Isaac. I mean, what does Hazel have that I don't? Lucy found that she was sympathetic. Mary Lou had something about her that made Lucy want to like her and be her friend. I don't know. I don't think she has anything that you don't have. I really don't know how it all happened. I'm glad you said that because you're my best friend, and then you were her attendant at her wedding. I was hurt by that. I can understand that. I was put in a hard position by Mrs. Fuller. She asked me in front of Hazel if I'd do it. And then Hazel asked me, so it was kind of hard to get out of it. Especially when Hazel knows no one very well. I guess I was the natural choice because of my relationship with Levi. I can't blame you too much then. Mary Lou gave a little chuckle while Lucy pulled some mugs down from the high cupboard. Lucy sat down in front of Mary Lou while the milk heated. She wished things could be back to normal. Things had been so good when Mary Lou was dating Isaac and she was dating Levi. Everything just seemed to make sense, and now everything was upside down. I hope you don't blame me for anything, Lucy said. I really couldn't get out of being Hazel's bridesmaid. I don't blame you. Anyway, enough talk about that wedding. I've noticed a few times that Levi and Nella have been talking to each other. I've never noticed that before. It's just happened within the last few weeks. Are they good friends now or something? Or is it something more sinister? It wasn't good that Mary Lou and Lucy's mother had both noticed him talking with Nella at different times. She had to be honest. I've seen that too and I've wondered about it. Have you asked him? I did, but I didn't get a proper answer. What if she likes him? Mary Lou asked. It's up to Levi. If he likes someone else more than me, there's nothing I can do about it. You'd give up without a fight? Lucy frowned. A fight? Yeah. Well, not literally. Lucy shook her head. I won't fight for anything or anyone. Either he wants me or he doesn't. That's very brave of you to say that, after the way I was dumped. You can't force a man to love you. And I don't want to marry a man who doesn't love me. Are you talking about me and Isaac? Nay. I wouldn't say something like that to you. From my point of view, if Levi wants Nella to be his girlfriend now and not me, there's nothing I can do about it. Mary Lou pursed her lips. I think you should have a talk with Nella to see why she's always speaking to him. I couldn't do that. Lucy jumped to her feet when she heard the milk bubbling. She mixed in the sugar and the cocoa powder to make the hot chocolate, stirred it over low heat until it was creamy smooth and poured it. Then she placed one mug in front of Mary Lou and another one on the table for herself. When she had picked up 2 more mugs, she said, I'll just take these out to my sisters. After that was done, she sat down again with Mary Lou. After she took a sip of hot chocolate, Mary Lou licked her lips. Danke for this. It's nice. You're welcome. I only said what I said about talking to Nella because, looking back, I think I should have said something to Hazel and I didn't. She had the advantage of working with Isaac and seeing him every day. That's how she was able to drive a wedge between us. There was nothing I could do about it when things went too far. But I regret not doing anything when she first started working there. Then she started working after hours with him. Mary Lou gave a little sigh from the back of her throat. How did that come about? Lucy was confused that Mary Lou was telling her all this. Maybe she'd been wrong about Mary Lou, because it sounded like she was trying to help her. The Fuller business was being audited or something like that, and Isaac told me he had to make sure the books were right. Since Hazel had taken over that job from him, he had to show her how he'd been doing the books. And you think the extra time they spent together made the difference? Of course it did. We were fine until she started working there. I wish she'd never come to this community. They sat for a while in silence as they sipped their hot drinks. From the lack of talk coming from the other room, Lucy knew the girls were listening in. Finally, Mary Lou said, "I want to help you and Levi get back together." "You do?" "Yeah. We can't let Nella get in your way." Lucy stared at Mary Lou, wondering what game she was playing now. "Danka, but I can't worry about that. I only just finished saying I can't worry if he likes someone else." "That's okay in theory, but in real life it doesn't make sense. Men don't really know what they want." "Don't they?" Lucy asked, wondering how Mary Lou knew so much. "Of course not. If they knew what they wanted, Isaac would have stayed with me." Mary Lou frowned and lines appeared in her forehead. Maybe there was some truth in what Mary Lou said, because it was accurate that everything between Isaac and Mary Lou seemed fine, until Hazel came to work at the Fuller's kitchen joinery workshop. Except that Isaac had never asked Mary Lou to marry him. "I'm only trying to help you, Lucy." "I know, I can see that. Danka. That's what friends do for each other. Let's talk about something other than men. Can we do that?" Mary Lou giggled. "Okay. What else would you like to talk about?" "Pies." "You want to talk about pies?" "Yeah. I was thinking of making a pie tonight for dinner. They're Dad's favorite." Mary Lou sighed. "You see, everything reminds me of Isaac, even pies. Apple pies are Isaac's favorite too." Lucy felt sorry for her, but there was nothing to be done since Isaac was already married to Hazel. When she couldn't think of any comforting words, she took a sip of hot chocolate. Mary Lou certainly wasn't helping take her mind off Levi. "I just remembered there is somewhere else I need to be." Lucy was startled by Mary Lou's sudden words. "But you haven't even drunk all of your hot chocolate yet." "I don't want to get fat." Mary Lou rose slightly, pushed her chair back, and then stood up. Lucy looked at her friend's slim frame. "But you're not fat, you're really skinny. And that's just the way I'd like to keep it." "Where do you need to be?" "I said I would help one of my sisters with something." Lucy jumped to her feet. "I'll walk you out. I wish you could have stayed longer." "Me too, but my sister won't be happy if I keep her waiting. I forgot her once before, and I can't do that to her again." "Okay. Danka for stopping by." Lucy walked out to the buggy with her and waited in the cold while Mary Lou took up the reins, got herself comfortable in the seat, and then moved the buggy onto the road. "Bye, Lucy," Mary Lou yelled over her shoulder while waving her hand over her head. "Bye, Mary Lou." Lucy hurried back to the house, hoping her hot chocolate was still hot. Blocking the doorway to the house was Adeline. What did she want? "Quick, it's cold. Let me inside." Adeline moved out of the way and Lucy rushed into the kitchen, and when she grabbed her mug, she wrapped her hands around it to warm them. She took a sip, glad that it was still hot enough to warm her inside too. "Well?" When she'd sat down, she saw that Adeline was now standing in the kitchen doorway. Lucy slumped into the chair and Adeline sat next to her. It was weird. She didn't really say anything at all, and then she started asking me questions about Levi, which you would have heard. Then after that, she told me that she's worried for me because Levi spends a lot of time talking to Nella. "Yeah, I heard her talking about Nella. She was talking as though she hasn't been talking behind your back." "That's right. I thought I heard her talking about Nella." "That's probably a lie. I've never seen him talking to Nella." "It's not a lie. I've seen him talking to her 2 or maybe 3 times. Why didn't you ask her why she'd been saying awful things about you? You could have told her you found out what she's been doing." Lucy shrugged. "I don't know. It was awkward with her in front of me. She's so forceful all the time. She says she wants to see me and Levi together, and Nella is some kind of threat to me, just like Hazel was with her and Isaac. You know how that ended?" "Yeah, not very well for Mary Lou." Lucy nodded. "Danka for trying to protect me earlier. She made me mad. I guess I shouldn't have said what I did. I know you had the very best intentions. Adeline nodded. I did. I think Mary Lou is too sly. She's like a fox. She watches everyone with amber eyes like a fox. She has blue eyes. It doesn't matter what color they are. They're hunting eyes like a bird of prey has. And a fox, Lucy added with a giggle. That's right. Sly like a fox. Well, I can't worry about it. There's nothing much I can do. About what? Catherine, their youngest sister, asked. She'd brought her hot chocolate into the kitchen with her, and Adeline's too. She joined her sisters at the table, handing Adeline's mug to her. It's just that I don't know whether I can trust Mary Lou, and Adeline thinks I can't. Of course you can't. Is your memory so short? She's only pretending to be your friend to your face. You can tell just by looking at her that you can't trust her. Lucy shook her head, resisting the urge to ask her how she could ascertain that. Or was Catherine just babbling, trying to keep up with conversations that were too old for her? Catherine was only 15. Did I hear you mention Nella's name? Asked Catherine. It was Mary Lou who mentioned Nella first, Adeline said. We heard a bit from the other room, but not all of it. Lucy told her youngest sister what Mary Lou had said about Nella and Levi. And Lucy has said that she has seen them together too, Adeline added. I can't see what's wrong with that. Why can't Levi and Nella talk to each other? Lucy took another sip of hot chocolate. When she placed the mug down on the table, she said, You wouldn't understand, you're too young. I'm not too young to understand that a man and a woman can be friends. Just because they talk doesn't mean they want to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Lucy nodded. Maybe it doesn't mean that, but maybe it does. Especially if they're seen talking together a lot, Adeline said. Do you want me to talk to Nella and find out if she likes Levi? Last time we talked, she told me she liked his brother Joshua. But he's too quiet and never talks to her. So maybe she has gone for the more outgoing brother. Danka for making me feel better, Lucy said sarcastically. Adeline said, That's interesting what you just said, Catherine. Maybe she still likes Joshua. I'll find out, Catherine said. I didn't know you were a friend of Nella's, Lucy said to Catherine. I've got a lot of friends. I talk to everyone. Okay, talk to her. It will be interesting to hear what she says. Lucy hoped Catherine wouldn't find out that Nella liked Levi. Chapter 13. Every Friday night in the cold weather, the three oldest Fuller boys helped the elderly and the widows by chopping their wood and restocking their wood boxes. While they were sorting out wood to chop at old Sarah Kersler's house, Isaac said to Levi, Hazel is just about ready to paint. She'd like it very much if Lucy helped her. Yeah, Lucy already said she would. She's looking forward to it. Good. Hazel really likes Lucy. Do you know if Lucy's doing anything tomorrow? Tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow, Saturday. You'll be seeing her tonight, won't you? Levi wasn't sure what to say. He wasn't ready to tell the world that he and Lucy were going through some problems. I was thinking of stopping by her place before I went home. I thought so. I guess that was why you brought your own buggy today, Joshua said. Levi nodded. It wasn't the reason, but he had planned to drive past Lucy's house in the hope that he might catch a glimpse of her. There was no way he was going to admit that to his brothers. They would have teased him and called him all kinds of names. The brothers took turns chopping the wood, and soon old Sarah had a good store of wood in her barn, and they were in her house filling her wood box by the fire. Joshua put another log on her fire. Is there anything else we can do for you today, Mrs. Kersler? I had a tap in the kitchen that was hard to turn on, but someone came out just yesterday and helped me with that. I've got nothing left for you to do. We'll be back when you're running low on wood then. You just let us know. It's very good of you boys to do this. How's that new wife of yours, Isaac? She's fine, just fine. When Mrs. Kersler turned to Levi, he knew what was coming. Will it be your turn next, Levi? Everyone was asking him if he was going to be next. Levi smiled at the old lady. Who knows? It could be any one of us. It'll be Levi, I'd say, Joshua said, slapping Levi on his back. Levi moved away from his brother. He was annoyed with him but couldn't show it. Lucy is a lovely girl, Levi. I like to see all the young people getting married. It gladdens my heart. Would you boys like a hot drink now that you've finished? I'd love one, Joshua said. We do have other places to be, Isaac reminded him. He looked over at Mrs. Kersler. Danke for your kind offer, but we must keep moving. I understand. Maybe another time, she asked. Yeah, another time, Isaac said. They said goodbye to Mrs. Kersler and headed to the last place of the day, William and Mary Reed's. They were an elderly couple, and William hadn't been well. There's no need for the three of us to go to the Reeds, is there? Levi asked. Nay, Joshua and I can handle the Reeds. Why don't you go to Lucy's and see if you can arrange things for tomorrow? And if Lucy can make it at this short notice, it would be good if we could all have an early start. Levi raised his eyebrows. You've got work for me to do at your place too? Isaac chuckled. It's possible I forgot to mention that. I've been so busy lately. Yeah, it is possible you forgot, and nay, you didn't mention it. This is the first I've heard of it, Levi said. Did you have anything else to do tomorrow? Isaac asked. Nay, I'm happy to help. What are we doing? Come prepared and I'll let you know tomorrow. The girls will be painting, and you and I can do the hard work. Sounds good? Levi farewelled his brothers and set off in his own buggy to Lucy's house. He tried his best to calm himself, but the closer he got, the more he sweated. He was worried about what Lucy might say to him. He wondered whether he should apologize, but he felt he'd done nothing wrong, and he wasn't going to be sorry for having an opinion that differed from Lucy's. That thought gave him pause. Why did he think she shouldn't have an opinion that differed from his? And what if she wasn't home? Besides that, he didn't even know whether she'd told the rest of her family that they were having problems in their relationship. When he had last spoken to her, she hadn't told anybody, but maybe she had changed her mind. It would be awkward to be faced with any of Lucy's family if they knew about their arguments. He wished it had never happened, but it had. He stopped his buggy near the barn. When he had secured his horse, he patted him on his neck. I won't be long, boy. Hopefully, I won't be coming straight back out, but you never know. He walked briskly up to the front door. Before he knocked, he took his time to take long, slow, deep breaths. Then he took off his hat and smoothed back his hair in case she invited him in. After he had knocked on the door, he heard scampering footsteps and whispers. Then within moments the door was opened and he was faced with Lucy. He tried to gauge her mood from the expression on her face. She didn't look pleased to see him, but neither did she look horrified. Hello, Lucy. Lucy opened her mouth, but before she could answer, her mother appeared behind her and opened the door wider. A huge grin covered her face. Levi, you've come to dinner after all. Lucy, you didn't tell me he was coming. That's because I didn't know, Lucy said quietly. I didn't come for dinner, Mrs. Miller. I just wanted to talk to Lucy for a few moments if I might. Yeah, of course. Come in out of the cold. Mrs. Miller stepped back, holding onto Lucy's arm. Go on over and sit by the fire where it's warm, Levi. Levi saw Lucy's two sisters sitting on the couch in the living room. Mrs. Miller rushed over to them. Girls, you come with me to the kitchen. Levi smiled at the girls as they passed him. And then before he knew it, Lucy and he were alone in the living room, sitting on a small couch by the fire. He glanced at her and she looked away. He put his hands up to be warmed by the fire. It's a nice fire. It's just a fire, she said. We've been out chopping firewood for people. Who's we? She asked. Joshua, Isaac and me. That's right, I forgot you three do that. The reason I'm here is that Isaac asked me if you would help Hazel paint tomorrow. His heart was pumping so hard he hoped she didn't hear it. I told her I'd help her. Is she doing it tomorrow? Yeah, she is. You don't mind doing that, do you? If you do, I'll tell them you were busy. Not at all. It'll be fun. He was relieved, and then he lowered his voice. You haven't told your mother anything about us? Nay, I haven't said anything to anyone. She gulped when she remembered she'd told her sisters and Mary Lou. It wasn't as though she meant to lie. The words tumbled out of her mouth before she realized they weren't quite true. He nodded. That's good. You might as well stay for dinner now that you're here, if you want to. Really? He was surprised she asked him. Now he felt there was hope for them. Yeah, we're having roasted meat and roasted vegetables. It smells delicious. You wouldn't mind if I stayed? I don't mind. Mom keeps asking me to invite you for dinner, and I kept putting her off. Did she get suspicious? Nay. It was just after Hazel's dinner when Hazel and Isaac came back from visiting. I said there'd been too many dinners on lately. And there had been a lot. He chuckled. People do have to eat. That's just what Mam said. Danka, it was nice of you to ask me, but I won't stay. It would be a little awkward. She nodded. I guess it might be a little weird. I could collect you tomorrow and bring you home. Would that be all right? I'll be helping Isaac with things over there. I suppose so. When are we going to tell people? She asked. He'd gone from hopeful to feeling that Lucy wanted their relationship to be over. He couldn't go on without knowing what was on her mind. Do you want to end things between us? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. She bit her lip. Do you? He didn't want to make it final, but neither did he want to feel vulnerable. He was a man, and wanted to feel as though he was in charge of what would become of their relationship. If she didn't care about whether they were going to be together, he'd feel weak if he told her how much he cared. He had to appear strong or she might not respect him. I don't know. You don't know about what you want, or you don't want to be in a relationship with me? It's not you, it's the situation I don't know about. Chapter 14. Lucy swallowed hard. She had her answer. At least she hadn't wasted 2 years on him like Mary Lou had wasted on his older brother. Suddenly he rose to his feet. I'll say goodbye to your mother and sisters and then I'll go. Okay. She followed him to the kitchen, and then when he was done saying goodbye to everyone, she walked him out to his buggy. Your father's not home yet? He asked. Nay. He'll be home any minute. I'll see you nice and early tomorrow, Lucy. She nodded, too upset to speak. Then she forced herself. Bye. She tried to lift up her hand to wave, but it felt like a lead weight. Lucy could only watch Levi drive his buggy away, and then her thoughts turned to her sisters and mother in the kitchen. She hoped that her sisters hadn't said anything to their mother about the status of her relationship. Her mother would make a dreadful fuss, and probably scold her for letting a good man like Levi slip through her fingers. When she'd seen Levi arrive at the house, she had hoped he was there to apologize and win her back. Things were as far from what she'd hoped as they could have been. But still, there was a glimmer of hope because he had wanted to collect her to take her to Isaac's and Hazel's and bring her home again. And it had seemed like he almost said yes to staying for dinner. If only he had. Lucy walked back into the house and into the kitchen. Her mother didn't say anything about Levi. Instead, she just gave her instructions on what she had to do in the kitchen to prepare the dessert they were having that night. When they heard their father arrive home as usual, their mother hurried out to greet him. What's going on? Adeline whispered when it was just the 3 girls in the kitchen. Nothing's changed. Everything is the same. And it doesn't look good. I'm going to Hazel's tomorrow to help her paint the Grossdotty house for her mother. She's moving there to live. And will Levi be there? Catherine asked. Lucy nodded. He'll be collecting me tomorrow and bringing me back home afterward. Now don't say anything more or Mam will wonder what we're talking about. Levi drove home slowly, his thoughts a swirling jumble. Should he have stayed for dinner? Was that Lucy's way of trying to get them back on track? Or would that have been a mistake? Were they meant for each other or not? Once there had been no doubt in his mind that Lucy was the girl he'd marry. This was one decision in life that he could never go back on. Once a decision on a suitable marriage partner was made, there was no going back. He didn't want to be one of those men who committed to marriage and got cold feet before the wedding. He knew of 2 of those. If the things he was now finding out about Lucy were true, why hadn't he seen them before? Had he been so blinded by wanting to be in love and happily married, that he overlooked some serious flaws? She was a pretty girl, so maybe that was part of the problem. Had he liked the way she looked so much that he didn't see the warning signs? He shrugged and then let out a loud groan. It was loud enough that his horse's head rose and his ears turned around just slightly, which amused Levi. What will I do, Heavenly Father? Please let me see the true Lucy. Lucy made sure she was awake the next morning at first light. Levi hadn't said what time he'd be there, and she didn't want him to arrive when she was half-dressed. She pulled on her oldest clothes, so it wouldn't matter if they got ruined by paint splashes. When she was dressed, she pulled her brush through her long hair. Then she divided her hair into 2 sections and carefully braided each side before she pinned the braids against her head. Lastly, she placed on her oldest prayer cap. Before she headed downstairs, she pulled the curtains aside and looked out to see if she could see Levi's buggy approaching. Nothing, so she had time for a cup of coffee and a bite to eat. As she sat drinking her coffee in the kitchen, she appreciated how quiet it was before everyone else woke. It was a Saturday, so everyone was sleeping a little longer than normal. As soon as she heard a buggy, she poured the rest of her coffee down the sink, rinsed out her cup and headed out the door. Before she took a second step, a gust of icy wind bit into her cheeks, sending a chill through her body. She turned around and opened the door, grabbed her thick black cape, which was hanging behind the front door, and slung it around her shoulders. "Good morning," Levi said when she climbed up beside him. "Hello. I wasn't sure what time you were coming." "Me either, but I know they wanted an early start, so I came as soon as I woke up." "Did you have breakfast? I can fix you something here." He smiled at her. "That's fine. I had something." He clicked his horse forward. She wished things weren't still awkward between them, but they were. He was speaking to her as though she was a stranger. "What work are you doing there today?" "Isaac hasn't told me yet. I asked him and he didn't want to say, so I'm guessing it's something hard." Lucy laughed. "That figures." When Lucy and Levi approached the house, she couldn't believe her eyes. At the front door of Isaac's house, talking to Hazel, was Mary Lou. How could this be? Lucy thought it would have taken a good year or 2 before she'd be friendly with either Hazel or Isaac. She turned to Levi. "What's Mary Lou doing here?" "Are you sure she's here?" "Yeah, right there at the front door." Lucy pointed to her and Levi looked over. "That's odd. I guess she's here to help." "Oh, she's helping too." Lucy hid her feelings about Mary Lou being there. "I'm only guessing that's why she's here." "I'll let you out here close to the house," Levi said. "Danka." She got down from the buggy knowing that Hazel and Mary Lou were watching her. Hazel stepped down from the porch and walked over to meet her. "Danka for coming to help me. It means so much to us." "And Mary Lou came to help paint too." "Yeah, I can see that," Lucy said, smiling at Hazel. "Have you had breakfast yet?" Hazel asked. "I have. I was awake early this morning." Hazel smiled at her. "Are you ready to get started?" "I am." "Are you painting with us too, Mary Lou?" Lucy asked. "Yeah. I already said I am. I'm here to help with anything I can." "Excellent. Lead the way, Hazel." Hazel took them through to the Gross Dotty house, a small addition to their own home. It had a bedroom and a small living room, plus a bathroom and a kitchenette. When they walked in, they saw it was all set up for painting with a ladder, old sheets on the floor, pans, trays and brushes. "I can't wait to get started," Mary Lou said with a good measure of enthusiasm. "When is your mother arriving?" Lucy asked Hazel. "As soon as we get the place ready, Isaac and I will go and get her." "You'll both go?" Mary Lou asked. "That's right. Here's the paint." Hazel walked over to a tin of paint, picked up a blunt metal tool and lifted the lid to reveal a rich buttermilk color. "I stirred it earlier this morning. I don't think I'll need to do it again." She tipped the tin just slightly to one side. It looks good enough to eat, all thick and creamy," Lucy said as she giggled. "Yeah, it looks nice. It'll make the place nice and light." "Isaac doesn't mind that your mother's going to be living here?" Mary Lou asked. "Nay, he's pleased. He was the one who suggested it when he asked me to marry him." Lucy could feel the tension in the air at the mention of Hazel and Isaac's recent marriage. "That's so nice of him," Mary Lou said. "My family is his family now too," Hazel pointed out in a sweet voice, totally unaware she was further upsetting Mary Lou, the woman who'd thought she would be the one to marry Isaac. "Yeah, I know that." Mary Lou's voice was barely a whisper. Lucy needed to get the subject of the conversation back to painting. "How are we going to paint this, with rollers or what?" "We've only got brushes, so do a good job." Hazel giggled. "And try not to leave brushstrokes." "Oh, we need to put on our painting smocks." She raced to the other side of the room, picked up a white bundle, and then peeled off white shirts and handed one to each girl. Put them on back to front. The girls giggled as they pulled on their large shirts. Then they helped each other button them up at the back. I hope nobody sees us like this, Mary Lou said with a giggle. Hazel organized the girls to paint different levels and sections of the room. A couple of hours in, Mary Lou was slowing down. Are we going to have a break soon? Okay, let's do that now before I pour more paint in the tray, Hazel replied. Good. My shoulders are aching, Mary Lou said, stretching awkwardly. Lucy would have rather kept going until it was finished, but followed along with what the others wanted, or rather, what Mary Lou wanted. After they had taken off their painting shirts, they headed out of the Grostoddy house and into the main house. All the while Lucy kept an eye out for Levi. She didn't see anyone, but she heard men talking in the barn. I've made us some sandwiches for lunch. Sandwiches? You didn't have to do anything special, Hazel, Mary Lou said. Lucy hoped Hazel didn't realize Mary Lou was being sarcastic. I wanted to, but I didn't have time. You're welcome to stay for the evening meal. I'll cook something nice. Nadenka. I'm so hungry I'll enjoy these sandwiches. She moved her shoulder in a circular motion. I didn't know what hard work painting was. You're doing a really good job, Hazel said. Just when they were sitting down to eat, Isaac and Levi came in for their lunch. What's this? Are the rooms painted already? Isaac asked. The three girls laughed, but Mary Lou laughed the loudest. We're halfway through, Hazel said. And it's looking good, it's a lovely color, Lucy added. Two other friends of Isaac's walked into the kitchen, and when the girls had finished their food, they moved out of the kitchen and left the men to eat alone. On the way back to the Grostoddy house, Lucy excused herself and made a visit to the bathroom. When she walked back into the Grostoddy house, it was only Hazel who was painting. Mary Lou was nowhere in sight. Had she gone home already? If she had, Lucy would feel bad for Hazel. Where's Mary Lou? Hazel turned around. She'll be back in a minute. Levi wanted to speak to her just quickly. Really? I didn't think they'd have much to say to one another. They've been spending some time together lately, Hazel said. Lucy pulled on her painting shirt, wondering how Hazel would know that. She figured Isaac must have said something to her. Have they? Yeah. Her worst nightmare had come true. It seemed that Mary Lou had tried her hardest to come between herself and Levi, and it looked like her wicked plan had worked. She picked up her paintbrush and touched it with her finger to make sure it was still damp. Then her head swam and she felt woozy. Excuse me a minute, Hazel. The paint fumes have made me feel a bit lightheaded. Hazel frowned and walked toward her. Lucy, go out into the fresh air. Are you okay? I'll be fine. I'll just go outside for a minute. I should be all right. Okay. Take your time. I'll open the other windows. Look, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I just wanted to spend some time with you. It wasn't really about getting the rooms painted. Lucy knew she had to walk away quickly. She wouldn't be able to stop crying if she started. I want to do it. I'm having fun. I'll be back. I just need a few minutes. Okay. Lucy hurried away from the house, hoping no one would see her. With a quick look over her shoulder, she slipped into the thick blanket of trees behind the clearing near the barn. Her life was crashing down around her. Things had been good with Levi, and then they'd gone so bad. Mary Lou had made things worse by throwing fuel onto the fire. To stop from crying, Lucy concentrated on walking and only stopped when she came to a creek. She leaned against a tree and watched the water trickle slowly as the wind swept along, making ripples over the water's surface. Lucy was still in the old white back-to-front painting shirt and knew she had to get back to Hazel and act normal, but how could she do that when all she wanted to do was cry? Her stomach churned while thinking of what Levi might be saying to Mary Lou. Was he going to reassure Mary Lou that he would soon be free? It was odd that Mary Lou was there, but no, if Levi liked Mary Lou, he wouldn't have collected Lucy, and he'd even offered to take her home again. He hadn't offered to collect Mary Lou and take her home. Now that she'd analyzed the situation and had applied some logic, she felt a little better. Still, something wasn't right with Mary Lou being there after how she'd talked about Hazel and Isaac. Lucy felt ashamed of herself for not being friendlier with Hazel, when Hazel had gone out of her way to be nice to her. She'd let herself be influenced by Mary Lou even to the point of doubting her own feelings for Levi. As she pressed her back against a tree trunk, she thought more about Mary Lou. It frightened her that another person could have so much influence over her decisions, and over her life. Did that mean she was a weak person, to let herself be pushed around by Mary Lou's whims? She had to become a stronger person and stand up for what she wanted. What she wanted right now was Levi if she hadn't left things too late. When Levi had Mary Lou alone where no one could hear them, he knew he had to talk fast. "What did you want to talk with me about?" She tipped her head to one side and smiled sweetly. He scratched his neck. He didn't want to hurt her feelings. "Well, you see, you said some things to me about Lucy and caused some trouble between us. I didn't mean to. I just thought you should know the truth." Levi tipped his hat back slightly. "The truth is a funny thing. There's your truth, my truth, and Lucy's truth. They'll each be a different thing." "I'm not sure what you mean." "Each of us interprets things differently. It's not as though any of us is lying when we see things differently, or our view differs from another. What I'm trying to say is that you told me some things about Lucy and I took them to be bad. When I asked Lucy about them, she explained everything to me. I should have looked at her heart. I know she's a good person, and I believed the worst of her, and I regret doing that." "I see. You don't believe me." Levi saw her eyes well with tears. "I believe that you believe what you told me." He knew she was exaggerating things, but didn't want to upset or offend her, particularly when she'd just finished being shunned. It would have been a hard time for her. She'd been strong to return to the community. "I do. I hope you know what I'm saying." She blinked rapidly. "You're in love with Lucy?" "Yeah, I am." "Well, that's just fine. I'm happy for the both of you." He wanted to believe that her words were genuine. "Danka. I hope we can all continue to be friends. We've never been anything but." He nodded. "Is that all?" she asked. "That's all I wanted to say." "Good." Mary Lou turned and stomped away. Even though he'd upset her, he had to say something to her. He'd been as tactful as he possibly could. A crackling sound behind Lucy turned her head. She was relieved to see Levi headed toward her. She stepped out from behind the tree. "There you are," he said. She was relieved that he must have been looking for her. Hope filled her body like a beam of sunlight lighting up the darkness. "I just needed some fresh air." When he looked down and cleared his throat, she steeled herself to hear bad news. He wasn't smiling, and she knew him well enough to guess he wanted to end their relationship. She took a deep breath. She'd surely cry if he gave her bad news, and then she'd have to go home. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yeah. I'm all right." She wanted him to get to the point. "I heard you were talking to Mary Lou." He nodded. "She's been a little strange lately, and I just wanted to be clear with her." His gaze flickered to the ground, and then he looked back up at her. "I wanted to be clear with her that I'm not interested in her, and there's only one woman I've got my mind on. I was surprised to see her here today, too." "You didn't invite her?" He drew his eyebrows together. "Nay, I didn't. I'm not sure who did." Lucy nervously waited to hear what else he had to say. When he didn't say anything, she said, "I better get back to help." Levi stepped closer to her. "Can we talk honestly for a moment?" "Yeah. We are, aren't we?" He nodded. "I don't like how things have been between us." "How do you want things to be?" "Lucy, I need you to tell me how you want things to be with us." She looked up at the sky. A small piece of blue was peeping through the gray clouds. Then she looked into his face and knew she had to be totally honest. "I want us to be how we were before." "Do you?" "Well, do you?" she asked, hoping he'd agree. "Nay, I don't want things to be how they were." She couldn't look at him. He didn't seem to want Mary Lou, but neither did he want her. He took a step closer to her. "I want things to be better than they were before. These last few weeks have been awful. Lucy, I never want you out of my life. Will you marry me?" He licked his lips and then asked again, "Will you marry me?" Lucy heard herself gasp, and then tears of relief fell down her face. He moved closer and placed his arm around her. "Don't cry. What's the matter?" She wiped the tears away with the back of her hand. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure about marrying you. That's the surest I've ever been about anything. I don't like to see you cry. Will you marry me? You haven't answered. All she could do was look at him through tear-filled eyes and nod. He smiled, tears threatening to fall from his own eyes, and she knew things were going to be okay. Come here. He put his other arm around her, and she pressed her head into his shoulder. I should have waited for a private moment when we were totally alone. Now we have to go back there and be with other people. Should we tell them? Nay. I want just us to know for a few days and no one else to know. It'll be our private thing. He chuckled. Okay, that sounds good to me. How about we spend some time together when we finish here today? Yeah, I'd like that. She stepped back and wiped her eyes on her painting shirt, then she giggled. I really didn't think you'd cry. They're tears of relief. I was so upset about how things were with us. We always got along so well, and then all of a sudden we didn't. It was hard to take. All that's in the past. Since he'd asked her to marry him, Lucy felt secure enough in their relationship that she could finally relax. She smiled and looked into his comforting face, and he smiled back at her. Let's go back. I've got painting to do. He chuckled again, and together they made their way back through the trees. When they parted, Lucy went to the Grosdotty house and Levi headed back to the barn. Lucy pushed the door open. I'm back. It was only Hazel in the room again. Where's Mary Lou? She forgot she had something to do at home. Really? Yeah, she had to do something for one of her sisters. Are you feeling a little better? Much better, Denka. I feel fine now. Lucy knew her face must be glowing, and her eyes would still be red. Hazel took a good look at her, and Lucy knew that Hazel could see she'd been crying. Can I get you anything? Nay, truly I'm fine. You must be excited that your mother is coming to live with you. I am. She's a little apprehensive though. It might take her a while to settle in. She'll love it. I think she'll get along with my mother. Mam's always felt a little bit of an outsider, not totally accepted by people. I'll bring her to visit as soon as yours arrives. That would be wonderful. She'll feel much better when she knows some people. Did they meet each other at the wedding? I think so. I think our families have a bit in common. What's that? That people don't think much of them? Hazel asked. Lucy giggled. Something like that. While she resumed painting, all she could think of was being married to Levi. She really wanted to tell Hazel the exciting news, but she couldn't. It was hard to converse with Hazel because she was so happy, she feared the news would just pop out of her mouth every time she opened it. Lucy was relieved when they finished painting the rooms and it was time to go home. Chapter 15. When Levi took Lucy home, he arranged to call and see her the very next night. Lucy opened the front door of her house, and there was Catherine waiting for her. I've been dying to tell you something all day, Lucy. I saw Nella this morning, and found out she likes one of the Fuller brothers and it's not Levi. Nella likes Joshua. Danka, Catherine. You don't look very relieved. That's okay, it doesn't matter anymore. Catherine scrunched up her nose. Why not? Lucy pushed past her. Just because I talked with Levi and we've sorted everything out. Oh, that's so good. What did he say? Lucy whispered. I'll tell you later. She didn't want her parents to hear anything about any of this. Now she'd have to be careful what she told her sisters because she didn't want them to know her good news just yet. It still seemed too good to be true. It had taken Levi being without her for a while to realize he couldn't do without her. And the same was true for her, having been without him temporarily. She was so tired she went to her bedroom, fell on her bed and closed her eyes. A gentle knock on her door woke her. Lucy, Mary Lou is here to see you. It was her mother's voice. Coming. Lucy had fallen asleep and had to work out whether she'd slept through the whole night or whether it was the same day. She looked out the window at the gray evening sky and knew it was still the same day. With a quick glance out the window, she saw Mary Lou's buggy. What's she doing here, she wondered. Lucy straightened herself up and headed out to see what Mary Lou wanted. When she saw Mary Lou sitting on the couch with her two sisters, she suggested Mary Lou come up to her room. Whatever she had to say was most likely best said in private. When Lucy had closed the bedroom door behind them, Mary Lou sat down on the bed and Lucy sat beside her. You left Hazel's place early. I did because I was upset about a few things. Is that why you've come here? Mary Lou nodded, and then tears trickled down her cheeks. I've been horrible and a really bad friend. I think you and Levi are perfect for each other, and I told you that I didn't think you were. I've been a dreadful friend, and I've come to ask your forgiveness. You've only ever been good to me. Have you done something else? You'll probably hate me when I tell you what I've done. She took a deep breath. I used to like Levi too, and I liked Isaac. Anyway, you know about Isaac. Of course I know about Isaac. It wasn't so long ago that I'd forget about you and Isaac. Oh yeah. Mary Lou gave a little giggle. Do you mind that I liked Levi? You can't help who you like, but I'm not happy that you told him things about me to make me look bad. Then you tried to influence me not to like him. Mary Lou sighed and looked down at her hands in her lap. That's why I'm here, to confess what I've done and ask your forgiveness. I've prayed about the horrible things I've done and asked God's forgiveness, but I know He'd want me to ask you to forgive me. When I confessed those things in front of the congregation, it was so embarrassing to me that I had to harden myself inside, and I didn't really mean the words. Later I prayed and I did mean the words. She looked up at Lucy. I regret what I've done. I used to be a horrible, dreadful person, but I don't want to be like that anymore. Lucy nodded. I forgive you. I'm so happy you told me all this. Danka. I want to be a better person because nice girls like you and Hazel find good husbands. I can tell that Levi loves you very much, and that's what I want. You'll find someone, Mary Lou. I know you will. Mary Lou sniffed. Do you think so? Yeah, I do. If I find someone I like, will you help me? Lucy giggled. I don't know if I'll be able to help. If you could, would you? Lucy nodded. Yeah, I would. Good, because I like Levi's brother. Who? I mean, which one? Lucy's hand went to her throat and she fiddled with her clothing. She hadn't thought it through properly when she'd agreed to help. Joshua. Lucy was lost for words because she knew that Nella liked him too. You see, you'll be able to help me because he's Levi's brother. Now Lucy wondered whether this was the real reason Mary Lou was apologizing, just to get back into her good books. She chose to push that idea out of her mind. She had to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Mary Lou had truly changed, because she had apologized and admitted to what she had done. What do you want me to do? Put in a good word for me with Joshua. Nella was surely a much better match for Joshua, and also Mary Lou was quite a few years older than he was. Why are you hesitating? I'm surprised, that's all. He's younger than you. I know that, but age doesn't really matter, and everyone older than me is married now. Are you sure? Yeah, I am. Will you help me or not? I suppose I couldn't blame you for not helping, because of everything I've just told you. Lucy figured that she could say something to Joshua, and it was his choice who he chose. It would take her a while to completely trust Mary Lou again. I'll do what I can. Danka, that's all I ask. It's a little odd that you've liked 3 brothers. Shush. Don't tell anyone that. I won't. It's weird, that's all. Not really. All the Fuller brothers are handsome and they're all really nice. Is there anyone else you like? Nay, I just told you there's no one. Are you saying you don't think it'll work out between Joshua and me? I don't know. Why are you acting funny about it? Do you know something, is that it? Mary Lou asked. Lucy gulped and didn't want to lie, but at the same time she couldn't betray a confidence. I'm just shocked. You've come here with 2 things that shocked me. Mary Lou giggled. I know. Do you think Joshua and I are suited? I don't know. He's taken a few girls on buggy rides even though he's very quiet. Yeah, that's why I figured the girls must have approached him, so that's what I plan to do. Oh. Why? Do you think that's a bad move? Lucy frowned. Exactly what do you like about him? I like that he's quiet, and he has a good sense of humor. I didn't think anything of him when I was with Isaac. My younger sister liked him. Does she still like him? Nay, she's moved on to someone else now. Oh. I'm so happy you forgive me. I've really seen what dreadful things I've done. Lucy nodded. I do. Mary Lou lunged at Lucy and gave her a tight hug. Danka. You don't know what that means to me to have a friend like you. Lucy hugged her back, feeling a little bit guilty for not believing her 100%. Can you stay for dinner? Dinner? It's way after dinner time, Mary Lou said. Oh, I didn't know. I fell asleep when I came home from Hazel's, and it looks like Ma'am didn't wake me for the evening meal. I'm sure she kept some aside for you. Mary Lou bounded to her feet. I'll go now. Lucy stood as well. Danka for forgiving me and agreeing to help with Joshua. Lucy smiled at her, wondering if she had agreed. She couldn't recommend Mary Lou to Joshua. With Mary Lou's forceful manner and Joshua's quiet ways, she'd walk all over him. I'll walk you out. Things were going well. She was soon going to marry Levi, and Mary Lou was back to being a friend, but a friend she'd keep a close eye on. The next night, Levi was excited to see Lucy and talk about their marriage plans. Although he'd agreed to keep things quiet for a few days, he didn't know if he'd be able to hold the news in for much longer. Isaac had told him all day how pleased he was to be married and how good his life was. Levi had wanted nothing more than to share his own good news with his older brother. The closer he got as his horse pulled the buggy to Lucy's house, the more nervous he became. What if she'd changed her mind? He'd built up plans in his head of how their life would be, but what if she was still upset with him? He knew she had every right to be mad at him for believing what Mary Lou had said. And he knew he would have to listen better when Lucy expressed an opinion that didn't match his. The moment the door opened and Levi saw Lucy's smiling face, he knew she hadn't changed her mind. Her face was beaming as though there was a light shining from within her. Hello. Hi, he replied, and then cleared his throat as his voice was kind of croaky. Are we going out, or do you want to come inside? Why don't we go out, and then I'll come in later, after that. Okay. I'll tell Ma'am and Dad I'm going out. He stepped back from the doorway a little. As he waited on the porch, he hoped she'd agree to getting married soon, which also meant that they'd have to tell people soon. She slipped through the doorway with her black cape over her shoulders, pulling on her black overbonnet. Have you eaten? He walked with her to the buggy. Yeah, have you? I had a little. I didn't know if we'd be eating, so I didn't want to fill up too much. I should have made a firm time and firm plans for tonight. It doesn't matter. She stepped into the buggy, and he hurried around to his side. As he picked up the reins, he asked, Have you told anyone? He clicked his horse forward. Nay, I haven't, but it's been dreadfully hard. I've wanted to tell everyone. I saw Hazel again today. She stopped by and I wanted to share my happiness with her. He chuckled. Why don't we tell people? Really? Yeah, why not? I wanted to get used to the idea, but now I am. I can't wait to tell the whole world, he said. Why don't we go tell my parents now, and then we'll go right back and tell yours? Tomorrow night we could see the bishop and make a date for the wedding, she said excitedly. This all doesn't seem real. Lucy put her hand to her forehead. Marriage is the next logical step for us. I know that, but we had that horrible time a few days ago. That's all in the past. It taught me some valuable lessons. Me too, Lucy said. It taught me what a wonderful girl you are, and that I never want to let you go. He glanced over at her and she giggled. Are we going to your house right now? She asked. Yeah. Okay. Chapter 16. Lucy was nervous about how Mrs. Fuller would react to the news. Mrs. Fuller didn't particularly like her, and would much prefer that her second eldest son marry someone else. Lucy knew that. Mrs. Fuller had never said anything to her or anyone else, but Lucy had gotten the unspoken message from her, loud and clear. When they got to Levi's house, he opened the door and stepped back for Lucy to enter first. Lucy saw Levi's parents sitting by the fire as though they were waiting for them. His brothers were nowhere to be seen. His parents smiled at her, and with his hand on her arm, Levi gently guided her toward them. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Fuller. His mother said hello while Mr. Fuller nodded. Lucy felt lightheaded, as though she might faint. She feared she couldn't go through with it. We've got something to tell you. Well, warm yourselves by the fire and sit down to tell it, his father said. When they had sat down, Levi said, Lucy and I are getting married." A pleased smile spread over his father's face and he congratulated them. "Ma'am, isn't it good news?" Levi asked when there was no reaction from his mother. "Yeah, I thought this was what it was going to be about. I hope you'll both be happy. I can't say more than that." Mr. Fuller gave his wife a curious look. "Now our two oldest will be married, Ivy." "I heard that," she said. "I still have my hearing even if my sight's fading a little. God has spared my hearing." "I knew you'd both be pleased," Levi said. "Now we must tell Lucy's parents." "Shall we go right now?" Lucy asked, hoping to get out of the house quickly. "Yeah, if you want." "I do because I think Dad was planning a very early night. We must catch him before he goes to sleep. The sensible thing would have been to see them first." Lucy nodded and didn't know what to say, and thankfully Levi came to her rescue. "We were going to keep it to ourselves for a while, but we just now decided to tell everyone sooner." His mother's lips turned down at the corners. "What's the rush with you young people these days?" "Isaac didn't rush," Mr. Fuller reminded her. "He was older and more sensible," Mrs. Fuller said. "Lucy and I have been dating a long time. Anyway, I don't think there's a required time. When you know you're meant to be with someone, you just know." Lucy agreed with Levi, and now she realized how Isaac had felt. He hadn't been in a rush when he was dating Mary Lou, and when he met Hazel, he had a whole different feeling about her and he knew she was the one meant for him. "We won't keep you. Go and spread your good news," Levi's father said. Lucy and Levi had a very different reaction from her parents. Her mother squealed with joy while her father looked as though he would cry. Maybe it was just that she was the first of his children to marry. After they sat and talked with Lucy's parents for a while, Levi decided it was time he headed home and Lucy walked with him to his buggy. "I'll speak to the bishop on Sunday. Or do you want to go see him together before then?" "Sunday's okay." Lucy was surprised when he swiftly pulled her into his arms. "Stop that." Lucy giggled. "Ma'am or Dad might see." "And what would that matter?" She playfully pushed him away. "It'd matter to me." He chuckled. "It doesn't matter, Mrs. Fuller." "I'm not Mrs. Fuller yet." "It won't be long and you will be." Lucy nodded, wondering how his mother truly felt about that. She had a pretty good idea. "I can't wait," she said. Maybe Mr. Fuller would have a talk with his wife about changing her attitude toward Lucy and her family. He took her hand and held it tightly. "Neither can I. I'm so happy you agreed to marry me. Danka. I knew from the beginning we'd get married." "Me too." 6 weeks later, Lucy and Levi were standing before the bishop in the midst of their wedding ceremony. At Isaac and Hazel's wedding, Lucy had wondered if her wedding would be the next she attended, and so it was. The last few weeks had been a flurry of activity, organizing the wedding details, planning the food, and sewing the wedding clothes. When her life returned to normal, or rather, when her life reached its new version of normal, she knew Mary Lou would talk to her again about Joshua. What would she do? There was also Nella, who liked Joshua too, and seemed a far better match for him. No daydreaming, she told herself. Not today. All of that was a problem for another day. Today was their wedding day, the day she'd remember for the rest of her life, and nothing else mattered right now except for Levi and her marriage to him in God's sight. Lucy had chosen her 2 sisters to be her wedding attendants, and that was an easy out to avoid adding Mary Lou into her wedding. Although Lucy forgave Mary Lou and they were friends, Lucy still had some reservations in her heart about fully trusting her. Her sisters were a more comfortable choice. Levi had chosen his 2 younger brothers closest to him in age, Joshua and Jacob. While the bishop was still talking, Lucy felt Levi looking at her and she glanced at him. Her heart melted when she saw the love in his eyes and felt the love coming from him. She said a silent prayer of thanks for the new life she was about to embark on. Levi glanced over at Lucy, the girl he'd always loved. He was upset with himself for letting another woman put doubts in his head about her. In a way, he'd thought Lucy too good to be true, and deep in his heart he felt he didn't truly deserve happiness. Now he had the rest of his life to be deserving of such a woman as Lucy. God had blessed him. God had indeed shown him the true Lucy. Thank you for listening to his Amish romance. I hope you loved Levi and Lucy. The next book in the 7 Amish Bachelor series is Book 3 Joshua's Choice.